Hello and welcome everyone to the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. I'm Josh Roller from Indiana, but residing in North Carolina. On the other side of this podcast is Rob Peeters, who is both living in from the great state of Indiana. Yes, I am a little biased towards my home state. I'm sorry. We have quite a bit to punch our way through today. That's to say the least there. Plenty of news, hectic NASCAR races, and then we have two new club inductees. Welcome Lewis Hamilton to the 100 Wins Club. He becomes the first driver to accomplish that feat in Formula One.
It's not much of a club if he's the only one in there.
Well, he started the club.
He's the club leader. He's the official club leader, and anyone else who ever wins 100 races has to bow to Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right on that. And then in Long Beach, IndyCar wrapped up its 2021 season, and Alex Palou joined an illustrious list of drivers who have won an IndyCar Series title. I say let's get started. So Rob, crank down the music, and when you're done, go ahead and start this show off with Rob's Racing Report.
All right, everybody. I'm at the master control desk here of the recording of this podcast. And we are going to go ahead and start the show off with some Formula One news, starting it off with Rob's Racing Report. An expected, but yet confirmed announcement until this week was that Haas F1 will retain its two current drivers for next year, and indeed, it has. Haas F1 has announced that they will retain Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin for 2022, which, again, comes to nobody's surprise. Mazepin is basically funding that, and Ferrari is probably lobbying and paying Haas quite a bit to make sure that Mick Schumacher is on that team. So, but hopefully, maybe we'll see. So, considering the fact that apparently Haas has put all of their eggs in the 2022 basket.
Yeah,
we'll see where they end up on the grid, because it has been very rough for anyone. Let's go ahead here, and since Haas is going to have some problems this year, we're hoping they get better next year. Anyway, let's move on here. To the next piece of news. The inaugural Miami Grand Prix will take place during the weekend of May 6th through 8th, 2022. So we're going to have F1 over here in May. We don't know any other parts of the F1 schedule, but we know that they're coming here in the very first week of May, which is going to be interesting given, the most of the attention in the motor racing world is usually on Indianapolis in May, but now I guess it's going to be down in Miami. I'm sure F1 is doing this just to bother me, right? Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto believes that the MGU-H component, a heat recovery system, will be dropped in the next set of engine regulations, which will aid new manufacturers to enter Formula One, including the Volkswagen Group. Okay, that's interesting. I'm curious to see where that goes. And by the way, here's a piece of news, more 2022 schedule news. Beginning in 2022, the Monaco Grand Prix will become a 3-day race weekend, ending a tradition of a 4-day weekend. This comes as the F1 weekend schedule is expected to be updated. Media obligations are expected to move from Thursday to Friday morning, with Friday only having one practice to accommodate calendar expansion. Okay, this is kind of interesting. We'll see, because
they want to shorten the weekend for everyone. They want to shorten the weekend.
But, Monaco, traditionally, you practice on Thursday, and then you have a rest day on Friday, and then you do qualifying on Saturday, and then a race on Sunday. Now, This is interesting because this past year, the F2 race actually ran, I believe, the first of their sprint races on, or maybe the second, I can't remember off the top of my head. It might have been their first. I think it was their first sprint race at Monaco on that traditional rest day, on that Friday morning. That was kind of unusual. That kind of hadn't been done before. So I'm kind of curious to see if maybe that running F2 on that Friday was maybe a bit of test to see, hey, is anybody going to feel weird if we race on, or if we turn cars on the streets of Monaco on a Friday? Can we do that? And I guess they realized, yes, we can. So they're doing it. Now, F1 CEO Stefano. Okay, so we've got a potential move to Kyalami that's being explored. Now, I'm fairly certain that Kyalami is indeed up to snuff and is, I believe, a I believe it is F1 FIA Grade 2 right now.
It's Grade 2, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. So certainly it will need some upgrades. But if they're interested, they very well seem to have the capital needed to upgrade the circuit to Grade 1 requirements. But I'm also curious because we talked about this last week. We talked about the potential return to Korea, which I see as less likely because they've talked about this in the past. I recall. I believe it was in 2014. They talked about this. They even put it on the provisional calendar for 2015 and then yanked it off there again when something else arose. I think it was Baku or something. It was a placeholder for something. Not Baku, but it was a placeholder for something. Now, I also read somewhere that there are some rumors that state a return to Sepang in Malaysia could happen. Now, I would personally prefer to see that. Obviously, I don't know what the future of the race in Singapore holds. We haven't held it for the past 2 years due to COVID, and
Sepang return than Singapore.
I would wonder if they are potentially exploring a return to Sepang in place of Singapore, which again I would be 100% fine with. I hate Singapore. I love Sepang, so you know my take on that. But those are interesting notes. And then, of course, we still have a TBC date on the calendar here. Now, we mentioned in the past that it could be Lusail circuit out in Qatar. I mentioned I'd be interested in seeing that, and I always kind of have been interested in seeing how F1 cars would perform on that circuit because I think it's a very interesting and unique circuit. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Utah Motorsports Park, Motorsports Campus out in Utah a little bit. Kind of reminds me of that. So maybe not as picturesque as that, but definitely gives me the same vibes in terms of track design.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to see how that works out. Like if they do end up going to Lusail, does Lusail come out and say, "Hey, F1, you guys clearly have a pretty big Middle Eastern presence. Would you guys come here? Would you guys consider, having a Qatar Grand Prix?"
I wouldn't mind it being a placeholder race, but I don't want it to be on a permanent schedule.
We'll see. I'm going to wait to pass judgment on it until we see how it races, because I might be biased by saying I think that that's one of the better Middle Eastern tracks. I mean, Bahrain is up there. We'll see what happens with Abu Dhabi, but I've always kind of liked Lusail, especially for motorbikes. But again, we'll see what we have to run a race there before we can really and truly see if it's deserving at least of another schedule. That's why I think Bahrain should just switch to the outer layout forever. But to each his own. Anyway, next piece of news here regarding Formula 2 and Formula 3 on Friday.
This made him happy.
It makes me very happy, believe me. On Friday, it was formally announced that F2 and F3 will return to their original race format for 2022. Qualifying will be on Friday. The sprint race will be on Saturday with a feature race on Sunday. F2 and F3 will also share the weekend once again, as opposed to running on separate weekends as they did this year. Thank goodness, because this was too confusing. This was way too awful. And I don't want to spoiler alert anybody here, but we ran the final F3 race and we ran the penultimate F2 race this past weekend.
I thought there's 2 more rounds in F2.
Nope, there's one. There's just one.
Oh, I thought there was 2.
And it's going. And do you know when it is? It's when we go to Saudi Arabia in December. Yeah. So again, we have these ginormous gaps between F2 races for some reason. And I don't understand why. I'll be curious to see what happens when we get to Saudi Arabia, because if there's anything,
there's 2 more rounds. There is. Yeah, sorry, not to interrupt you.
What's the next round?
It's Saudi Arabia in Abu Dhabi.
Okay. I forgot about Abu Dhabi. But the point is, it's still not until December.
Yeah, it's a long ways away. Yeah, it's a long ways away.
So I forgot that they were still running at Abu Dhabi. I don't know why I forgot that. Whatever. Sometimes I'm wrong. Thank you for correcting me, Josh, before I made a fool of myself on the show. But my point is, it's crazy to me that we had a break between July and September, and now we have a break from September to December. This is getting out of hand when it comes to the F2 schedule.
Then again, not to interrupt you, sorry, but I think a lot of this is just COVID scheduling. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
COVID scheduling. It's a bummer that you have to wait that long, But if you go back to a traditional schedule next year that it was 2019 and prior, you won't have to wait as long. But, like so many other things, it's just unfortunately a wrench has been thrown into their travel plans.
The biggest issue I have about that, too, is that the F3 season is entirely done.
Yeah,
the F3 season is over. We crowned a championship. We'll get to that in a little bit. But that season is entirely done. So usually in the period of time, normally when those feeder series end, they start working on putting pieces together for next year. Well, F2 is not over yet. Yeah. So, a team might elect to retain a driver or let go of a driver, or a team might get another driver, and these F3 drivers that are trying to move up, they have when are they going to be able to start signing contracts? When are they going to start shopping for other teams? Are they going to have to wait until after December, after the season is over?
You're going to wait until the Monday after the race.
Yeah, I mean that's.
But don't you think that there's people talking like, okay, we know how some things are going to shake out, or you have a really good idea of what ballparks are going to land in?
I'm sure they have this are having discussions, but we can't even begin to start thinking about putting pen to paper for some of those contracts until the F2 season is over in December.
Right.
I mean, it gives drivers like, as I'll talk about in a little bit, it gives drivers like Logan Sargent to maybe start rallying, maybe even crowdfunding some. I don't know if crowdfunding would work to get him an F2 ride for next year, but we'll see. But anyway, I'm just curious. I'm curious to see how that's all going to work out. But that's F2 and F3. We've got some good news working there. Moving on to IndyCar news. Lot of silly season news. We were expecting this to happen, and finally now we're getting the silly season news happening. It took long enough, but we've got it. Racer has reported that AJ Foyt Racing is considering expanding to a 3-car operation in 2022. Team president Larry Foyt has confirmed. Racer also understands that Tatiana Calderon is in the mix for a possible driver, as she has ties to Rocket. Now this was released by motorsport.com. This piece of news that I'm about to share was released by motorsport.com a little while before the IndyCar race on Sunday, that basically said and hinted that Sebastian Bourdais most likely ran his final race as a full-time IndyCar driver, as he does indeed have, I believe, a deal to run the full IMSA schedule next year with Chip Ganassi Racing. This deal being made possibly means that AJ Foyt Racing is going to either need to find somebody to take over the 14 car or find 2 drivers to split the 14 car with Sebastian Bourdais. Find another driver to split the car with Sebastian Bourdais. Yeah. If Bourdais is truly, put his IndyCar full-time racing days behind us, it's definitely sad. Not the way he wanted to go out. But actually, I will say that he has had some very good runs the last couple of races for that team. I believe he had a top 10, almost a top 5 on Sunday at Long Beach, which, not surprising. Bourdais won at Long Beach before. He's really good there. But just definitely kind of sad to see Bourdais kind of go out like that. Nobody really knew until it happened that it was probably going to be his last race as a full-time IndyCar driver. But again, if AJ Foyt is saying, oh, we might go to 3 cars next year, and then Bourdais is saying, oh, I kind of probably ran my last race as a full-time IndyCar driver, maybe certain things haven't been set in stone yet, and certain things could change. But we do know that Bourdais is committed to run the full IMSA schedule next year. So due to clashes, obviously, with Sebring at Texas next year, there's no possible way he can run the full-time schedule and still be in the mix for it. But we'll see. Now, that also poses another question, that if in the event, let's say Seb decides not to, I don't know what he could do. I don't know what the status of the 48 will be next year, whether Jimmy is going to run a full seat campaign or if he's going to run just, the Indy 500 and not Texas, or Indy and Gateway and not Texas, or all of the ovals, who knows? Yeah. We'll see. But, I would wonder, given the ties to Ganassi, if Ganassi could pull Bourdais for a couple of those rides that Johnson doesn't run. If he can't get Kanaan. I think the Kanaan deal is still for 2 years, so I think Kanaan still should be in that ride for another year. I don't know, maybe I was spitballing that, but definitely interesting possibilities to talk about in terms of silly season.
Yeah.
Juncos Hollinger Racing has signed Callum Ilott this past week to drive the number 77 Chevrolet full-time in 2022. Great news for the 2020 F2 runner-up, Callum Ilott, who I've always said is probably one of the more talented guys in racing right now, younger guys in racing right now. And he deserves a good shot like this, and I'm happy to see him come over here and give IndyCar a shot. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see that. I hope that him and Juncos can have better luck than they've had the last 3 races. Yeah. But definitely good to see. And then Ed Carpenter Racing has re-signed Rinus VeeKay for next year. No surprise there. I think that was done and dusted for a while. But the big news that broke this Monday morning, was Simon Pagenaud is actually leaving Penske Racing. He has signed with Meyer-Shank Racing for 2022, and he will take over the number 60 from the departing Jack Harvey. This is pretty huge. So now you have Elio and Simon Pagenaud on the same team with Meyer-Shank. Meyer-Shank just robbed Roger Penske. I mean, Roger Penske has no idea what he just lost, but maybe he does. I think he knows who he just lost, but now he's going to have to be competing with Elio and Pagenaud, as opposed to them racing for him as they have done for what seems to be the better part of the last decade.
There's a lot of
and Elio for 20 years, Yeah,
there's a lot of technical knowledge in that team now from Penske. Yeah. I know it's a Honda versus a Chevrolet, but there's still a lot of technical smart there that, I mean, Jack Harvey just hasn't had the opportunity to be in that type of a team, but
Harvey's helped build the team to where it is, but now you bring Elio and Pagenaud in there, who have years of knowledge at running at the front. I mean, you've got now 5 Indy 500s between the two of them. You've got an IndyCar champion now in Pagenaud. You've got IMSA champions Pagenaud was a ALMS champion, but I don't know. You could kind of put the two together. I guess you counting ALMS, Grand Am merging when they merged. I guess does that still fall under the IMSA umbrella of history? Can you call Pagenaud and an IMSA champion in the same regard as Elio? Could you, even though it was done in ALMS?
Do you consider Sebastian Bourdais an IndyCar champion?
Yes, absolutely.
Then yes. Yes to your question.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Sorry, I was kind of saying
a lot of experience and a lot of talent coming to Meyer-Shank. Which is probably going to help them a lot. Not saying Jack Harvey didn't help them, but I think Harvey's going to be better off with Rahal, because I think he's not going to be relied upon as much as he was at Meyer-Shank to give them as much data. Rahal's going to have the data that they have given Sato and Graham's performances, and they can just sit there and apply that to Harvey, and all Harvey's got to do is just go drive the car. And I think that's going to be, I would think that would be more beneficial to Harvey's career, because, I've seen him in Indy Lights when I watched him in Indy Lights when he's a Freedom 100 winner, for the record. Yeah. So, I mean, again, this guy knows his way around Indy, but even when he was in Indy Lights, he was the kind of guy who, he just needs to get in the car and drive, and you'll see that talent come out. And so it's a really good move for him. And then the worst kept secret in the IndyCar paddock has also been confirmed, with Roman Grosjean is moving to Andretti Autosport in 2022 to drive the number 28, with DHL continuing to sponsor the car. So it's not going to be Hunter Ray. We're going to think it's Hunter Ray, and we're going to have to tell ourselves it's Grosjean. But another interesting note to this is there's been a lot of speculation is how is Andretti Autosport going to move forward with these new drivers, this new driver in Grosjean. We are going to see officially, because if you look at Andretti Autosport, they got 4 cars. You've got Colton Herta, who is miles ahead of Rossi. Rossi is about mid-pack at best, can usually knock off of top 5. But then you have Hinch and RHR, who have been just back markers most of the season. Now, This is contrast to everybody who's been watching IndyCar for the past decade, who will know that Hinch and RHR are not back markers. They are front runners. They have been front runners. Hinch is an Indy 500 pole sitter. Hunter Ray is an IndyCar champion and an Indy 500 champion. These guys are no slouches. And just because Hinch has been out for a year, and just because Hunter Ray is getting up there in age, it doesn't mean that they've lost their ability. So it's led, and especially with Rossi kind of struggling as well as he did, it leads a lot of people in the paddock as well as fans to kind of question, well, is Andretti Autosport putting all of their eggs in the Colton Herta basket? And as a result, they're letting their other 3 teams kind of fall by the wayside.
I kind of wonder if a managerial change is on the horizon at Andretti.
That could be as well. But it makes you wonder, we're going to see, because we know know an expected idea of how Grosjean is going to perform in IndyCar.
Yeah.
That Dale Coyne, Rick Ware car, even though it has two of probably the most infamous team owner names in all of American auto racing. I mean, for years there, Dale Coyne probably shouldn't have had a team to begin with, and Rick Ware, his NASCAR team is really bad. But you put those two together and run Roman Grosjean in the car, and it equals success somehow.
Speaks of the talent of Grosjean.
Yes, it does. But we are really going to see if it's on the part of if it was driver or if it was team. And personally, if I'm being completely honest, I'm kind of leaning towards it was team, which is why I'm curious to see where Hunter Ray winds up, because now the Pagano is on his way to Meyer-Shank. That kind of closes a door that I think many, including myself, had kind of linked Hunter Ray to, kind of figured there was a mutual connection that could be brought in there. He'd run for him in the past. It seemed like potentially but now again, it doesn't leave Rahal off the table as well, because you still have that rumor that maybe Takuma Sato is on his way to Dale Coyne.
Yeah.
And to take his Honda backing with him. Now you get this Hunter Ray. Again, like I said, there's prior connections. Hunter Ray has driven for Rahal Letterman before in the past.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that they could reconnect and Hunter Ray could go out there and be fine? If they elect to go Hunter Ray, Harvey, Rahal, I think that's fine. But, we'll see. And I know you're telling me 22 minutes. There's a lot of news, guys. There's a lot of news. Let's move on to Supercars here. We'll try and run through this here as fast as I can, because Supercars has announced how they will resume the season. So they canceled the scheduled Queensland race day. They basically have canceled races all the way since July. Since the end of July, they have canceled all the races through, and they have rescheduled a bunch of races. Now, they have to run final 12 races in order to meet their television contracts, in order those parameters. So they have to run these final races. So how they're going to do that is they're going to run a quadruple header at Sydney Motorsports Park. Now all four races will be run under the lights and feature different layouts of the track. They will then head to Bathurst to finish the season with a week-long racing undercard leading up to the Bathurst 1000. The season will resume with the Sydney Super Night on October 29th through 31st, with a race occurring every single weekend until October. Excuse me, not October, December. Sorry, until December. So you are going to see a Supercars race starting basically from Halloween every weekend until the first week of December. Not bad. And it's going to culminate, and that week-long, the 6 days of Bathurst 1000 undercard race. We're talking Super 2. We're talking Super Utes. We're talking potentially S5000. We're talking, Australia, all types of Australian touring cars. We are talking. If you are a fan down there in Bathurst right now, you better be getting your tickets, because you are going to want to camp out and just sit back, take the whole week off, and watch 6 whole days of racing at Bathurst. I cannot think of anything cooler for a motorsport fan than that.
I can't. No, not that exists right now. Anyways, no, I can't. That's a pretty cool.
6 whole days of racing, all leading up to the Bathurst 1000. That's pretty cool. That is pretty awesome. That is pretty cool. You guys down under, I feel so bad that you guys have to deal with all the COVID crap that you're dealing with right now. But at least you guys can say you could go to Bathurst and see 6 whole days of racing.
Yeah.
Man, that is cool. And then the next piece of news here, some silly season news fell. Scott Pye has indeed re-signed with Team 18 on a new 2-year deal. That's the only silly season news in Supercars that has dropped, because keep in mind, we've been talking and following Supercars silly season news and rumors. There's still some openings, some gaps that need to be filled for next season. And now that we know when the season will conclude, maybe we'll start to see some contracts being drawn up and signed, hopefully here within the next few weeks or maybe months. We'll see what happens. Maybe some guys move, some guys stay. We'll see what happens. Definitely, we're probably in for some interesting shakeups over down there in Supercars. Now, finally, moving on to NASCAR here. Ford and Toyota have unveiled their new Camping World Truck Series bodies that will debut in the 2022 season. expect Chevrolet to debut theirs this weekend at Talladega as the race is named the Chevrolet Silverado 250.
Did you see the Toyota? Did you like the Toyota?
Yes.
I did. I liked it a lot.
I thought it was interesting. I thought it was new. I'm kind of, it's kind of going to be weird to see the Toyota namesake rather than their marquee logo on the front of the truck.
I think the same's going to be saved for Chevrolet. I think it's going to say Chevrolet across the front.
I was surprised that Ford didn't, because I see a lot of Ford trucks with that now.
Yeah, but I don't think those are those are like Ford Raptors. Yeah, they don't look as good as the Toyota and the Chevrolets. No offense to Ford. I mean, they make a good looking truck, but I like what the look that Ford went with, and I like what Toyota. It's a new direction. It's kind of a new era for the truck series in a way, and I like it.
Yeah, it is very interesting. It's going to be. It's just a new design. It's not really new entire chassis, so the racing is going to stay the same, but.
Yeah, the chassis is still the same for at least a few more years until they integrate what the Cup Series has into the Xfinity and Truck Series.
All right, next piece of news here. A limited liability company whose mailing address is the same as Hendrick Automotive Group has bought the Chip Ganassi Racing property for $10.2 million. The date of the sale was September 3rd. Caribas County property tax records show this. The Charlotte Observer reports that Trackhouse is expected to lease the property from Hendrick.
Cabarrus County, just to let you know. Cabarrus County.
Cabarrus County, thank you. I'm not from North Carolina. I don't know most of that. I know most of the weird town names in Indiana, but I don't know Caribas County. I apologize. Justin Allgaier will pilot the number 77 for Spire Motorsports this weekend at Talladega with backing from Brandt Agriculture, while Justin Haley pilots the number 16 for Colleague Racing. Probably a good call there. I'm actually, again, Haley has quickly established himself, in my opinion, as, simply put, one of the best plate drivers in NASCAR. Not plate, I guess, but super speedway drivers in NASCAR. So, Colleague, if they're trophy hunting, I know why they put it. They probably swiped Haley from his normal Spire ride, because if they're trophy hunting, I want Justin Haley in my car. And if we've seen that this car can win. So,
and Allgaier's not too bad at the speedways either. And
no, I'm not saying Allgaier is bad either, but if
he'll just hang back on the back and I'll let you guys wreck. I'll be there at the end. I'll put my Brandt 77 Spire Chevrolet in victory lane. Don't you worry. I like this move. I like this swap that happened here. That's why I noted it here. I love it.
No, I think it's great. I mean, it's good news. It's interesting news that we see that. I'm curious. I'm curious to see how that'll run. So we'll see what happens on Sunday. Yeah. Final piece of news here before we move on to the featured paint scheme. A big domino has fallen in the NASCAR Xfinity Series silly season as Daniel Hemrick will move from Joe Gibbs Racing to Colleague Racing to take over the number 11 in 2022. Until recently, Hemrick was expected to return to JGR next season, including those within the team. However, Hemrick did hint over the past weekend that part of his decision was the potential to return to the Cup Series with Colleague. So part of the reason Colleague may be bringing Hemrick in is sponsorship driven, as it was announced that Nutrien Ag Solutions will not return to Colleague next season, which does put Jeb Burton's future with the team into question. Now, speaking of that, I do believe Ward Burton released a statement that he was working on trying to get some new sponsorship for Jeb. And I know Jeb was working himself. They have the Burtons, Ward and Jeb, both have pretty solid relationships with their sponsors. It's just a matter of trying to bring them on for some more funding to try and keep Jeb in that car, because I think Jeb's been really good in that car. He hasn't won yet, which I think is coming.
He won at Talladega.
You're right, he did win at Talladega. I'm sorry. Sometimes I forget certain things. I'm sorry. I'm forgetful sometimes. He did win Talladega, but he hasn't really performed probably as well as AJ or Justin has, but I think Jeb is right up there.
At least the second half of the season. He's got off to a really good start this season, then kind of fell off. I wonder if that's like this first year kind of chemistry, getting everything worked out, getting the bugs worked out. I would love to see him get a second year at Colleague, just to see.
I would love to see it too. Happen. I think he would. I would think he would perform quite well in a second year. Yeah. But Josh, I think it's time to move on since that was all of the news, and I talked for about a half hour.
Well, that's not bad. Yeah, a lot of news to share, a lot of cool stuff going on, a lot of silly season as you mentioned. I can't wait to see what other dominoes fall. We're hearing that there's a couple more dominoes that are going to fall in the Xfinity Series, and we also have some more left to fall in the IndyCar side as well. So the featured paint scheme this week, the 2009 NASCAR Nationwide Series is the one we selected, or I guess I selected. I'm sorry. Rob would probably point that out to me. I don't know. I texted Rob, "Hi, Rob, 2009 NASCAR Nationwide Series," and I forget what you said, but you liked it.
I mean, look, you pick them, and this is how it works. You pick the season, the series in the year, and then I just pick my favorite scheme from that. It makes my life so much easier because I don't have to worry about what I want to talk about or, what paint scheme I'm thinking about. I just go in completely random, and I go through, and I go through J-Ski or Open Wheel 33 or whatever, and I'm just like, that one. I like that one the best, or I have a great story about this one, or something like that.
Well, Rob, why don't you tell us a story about the one you picked? Because I like yours.
Yeah, I love this. This one's crazy. If longtime listeners to the show know, I'm a very big Kasey Kahne fan. So when Kasey Kahne was racing down in the Nationwide Series, I actually loved it. I loved when Kasey Kahne ran in the Nationwide Series because I always loved just basically getting another opportunity to watch him during the weekend. So this one that I'm picking now is part of that weird transition year. Were for Kasey Kahne and his team, Richard Petty Motorsports, and there's a lot of weird transitions in 2009, partially because of the housing crisis. The economy was really kind of in the tank around this time. Teams were merging, teams were folding, teams were contracting, some were expanding, most were contracting, or they were expanding via mergers, what have you. It was just a very odd time to be a NASCAR fan. It was really there's a subset of very odd things, happening. And one of the oddest things that happened was at the fall Charlotte race in 2009. Kasey Kahne drove a number 43 Auto Value bumper-to-bumper Toyota Camry. And I'm dead serious when I say it's a Toyota Camry. I'm serious about this. Kasey Kahne drove a Toyota Camry. Now, this wasn't the first time he'd driven a Toyota Camry. This was because Braun Racing and Richard Petty Motorsports went into a brief partnership around this time in the Nationwide Series. They were going to field Kasey Kahne in a couple of races. Now, Kasey Kahne had driven for Braun in the past, or at least his predecessor, Adkins Racing, from 2003 to 2005. Now, so there's a relationship there, and Richard Petty Motorsports, and Evernham, the prior Evernham Racing, they had a kind of a nationwide team that was, I wouldn't say successful, but kind of a mid-pack nationwide team, this Busch Series team. And so Richard Petty Motorsports and Braun Racing get into a partnership, and they decide we're going to field Kasey Kahne in the fall Charlotte race in a number 43 Auto Value bumper-to-bumper Toyota. And we're going to put Petty Blue on it. Yes, and I'm telling you, this featured paint scheme, because we're talking about the paint scheme, does feature Petty Blue. So you are looking at a real actual image. If you pull this up on your phone, you're looking for it. You're looking for a real actual image that Kasey Kahne did in fact drive a Petty Blue Toyota Camry in 2000.
What's that STP red called?
What is it? Dayglow Orange? Dayglow Red or something?
Dayglow. Yeah. That's on the side. I mean, this is a Petty car.
It is a Richard Petty car, but you would not believe it that it's on a Toyota body. Now, this is the crazier part about this is an offset story. Is that Kasey Kahne actually made a couple other starts for Braun Racing that year, but in their number 10 car. Now, the most interesting part about this was instead of using the regular Braun Racing team font when Kasey Kahne drove the 10, which again was a Camry, while Kahne was driving a Dodge in the Cup Series, he was driving a Toyota in the Nationwide Series. But he wasn't technically driving for a different team. He was driving for a different team that was partnered with his Cup team. So it was, I guess, okay somehow. This would never happen nowadays. Never happen nowadays. But anyway, so he drove a number 10. And when Kahne was in that car specifically, they changed the number 10 to the Evernham font, the number 10. So it had the spikes at the back of the 0, as opposed to the normal 10 that Braun ran at the time. So just these very crazy partnership that dissolved almost immediately as it came. Like, they only ran a handful of races with Kasey Kahne in this partnership. And then as soon as Richard Petty Motorsports and Yates Racing merged, I mean, that partnership was gone because now, okay, they're committed to Fords, and Yates has a nationwide team. Okay, now just move Paul Menard over here. And Casey Kane ended up actually driving for Braun Racing again the next year in 2010, because Jason Leffler, I believe, had gone to was it Kyle Busch Motorsports that he ran, or was that was later? That was in 2012. He had gone to a different car. I think they moved him to a different car at the time. I should have double checked this, but that was a very interesting time in the Nationwide Series when you had a Richard Petty entered car have Petty blue, but it was a Toyota Camry. Now I have to wonder how many, old diehard NASCAR fans on their deathbeds were sent into a heart attack when they tuned into the Nationwide race that night and saw that car running around the track. I wonder that. But anyway, Josh, that was my featured paint scheme. Go ahead, and unless you have anything else to add about mine, I'm going to go ahead and give the floor back over to you.
No, I was just going to share. I looked it up for Leffler. He ran the 10 and the 30 as well as the 38 in mini races over the next 2 years.
Okay, so I guess he split the 38 with Casey Kane then.
Yeah, something like that.
That makes sense. Which I was totally okay with, because I always felt like Casey Kane needs to be in a number 38 Great Clips car regardless. Like, anytime he's in the Nationwide Series, he has to be in a 38 Great Clips car. If he's not in a 38 Great Clips car, to me, it was just wrong. So when he made that return to that car in 2010, I was like, everything's right with the world again. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine. Kane's in the 38, Great Clips. It's cool. I mean, yeah, it's a Toyota, but whatever. Who cares? He ended up driving a Toyota in 2011 anyway.
I picked one. That was a one-off scheme. And the number 5 Degree V12 Chevrolet, driven by Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Atlanta in the fall. This car has just always stuck out to me. I've always liked it. I wish I had a diecast of it, but I don't think they made any 1/64th scale diecast of it. They only made 1/24th scale. So this car was gold on the hood and the front fenders, over the top of the wheel, and then onto the roof. Then you had like this black streak in the middle, kind of spawned out from the tire and went up to the back, and the rear deck was black as well. And then you had white along the sides and the rear quarter panel. The 5 was white on the roof with gold and black accents, and then the number on the doors was gold with black accents. I just always liked the way this car looked. Now, you also might be saying, hey, you're describing to me a car that Brad Keselowski drove in the 88 car. You're right, he did. I didn't like the 88 on it. That's why I chose the 5. I don't know why. Like, it's the same darn car, just a different number, but it's amazing to me how a number can change it. Like, let me throw this out to you. Imagine the DuPont car with a 5 on it. It just doesn't look the same.
Just saw it in the Truck Series.
You saw it in the Truck Series, but imagine it with a 5 in a car. It just doesn't look the same.
Imagine if they went with the original number, the 46.
Yeah, that would be.
Didn't tell me how wrong that would look.
That I have pictures of that. I don't want to. I just about bought a custom diecast of that car one time. Just about did.
No way.
But the bid got too high. I'm like, for a car I don't want it. But anyways, this car, I just like it. I love the gold. I think the gold really does it for me. And V12 also just sounds cool. I think there's just a lot of cool looking and sounding things about this car that I like. And Junior sat on the pole in this race, in the race. It was actually conveniently named the Degree V12 300. Good sponsorship connections and plugs there. He led twice for a total of 16 laps, finished third. The race was dominated and won by Mr. Atlanta, Kevin Harvick. Back in the day. Kyle Busch was second, I think, in that race. So, good picks by us there, Rob. I mean, you got one for the record books. Obscure and forgotten also would classify this. You could have easily picked that one. It's not
forgotten by me. I never forgot this car, man.
It's darn obscure.
This was strange when it happened. I was like, I don't even know how to feel about this. I'm a Casey Kane fan, and even this feels wrong for me.
Yeah, definitely a lot of weird feelings from that car, and like you're just sitting here like, I can't believe this thing actually existed. So that's the featured paint scheme. Let's move on to the first race we're going to talk about today, and that's the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas on Sunday night. How Wow, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the
How was
show.
it on Sunday night? That's stupid.
We'll talk about it
later, I guess.
Later in the show. Yeah, about this race. First off, before we get into little minute details, Las Vegas is one of the few tracks that the package that they're running right now on mile and a halves is good. When I talk about like a smooth non-Darlington or Atlanta track, but I still don't like that the drafting and that it's so momentum driven. I just don't like it.
This was a very rare botch, I think, by this 550 package on the mile and a half. I don't understand how the race in the spring was really good, and then the races
cooler
in Kansas
temperatures
were really good, and then Sunday's race was just completely forgettable.
I think it's just the cooler temperatures. It was hot. It was 90s out there in Vegas.
I mean, that probably had something to do with it. I think the scheduling of this race, I never liked. I get that they want Las Vegas to be in the playoffs, but this is something that I'll say. I don't like that they have it this early in the playoffs. Like, I didn't understand when it was a playoff opener. I mean, I feel like if you're going to go to Las Vegas, or you're going to go to the southwestern United States, you kind of have to go in either March, February, or November. Late October.
Yeah.
I would prefer them. This is what, and I'll say this every time. I'd say, it's because I've stated this before, and I know this has nothing to do with the race. I stated before on this show that I don't like Phoenix being the finale. I don't know why they haven't just moved the finale to Las Vegas. You'll have better weather. You're, again, finishing the season in Las Vegas in a big market. I thought the reason why I prefer them to end the season in Miami is because I think it's a big market. It's a bigger market that they need to be in. You end the season in Las Vegas, that's a big market in and of itself. You get a lot of publicity down there as well. That's just as huge. I mean, if you can't end it in New York or LA, I would end it in Las Vegas. That's just my opinion. Not Phoenix. Phoenix is mid-major market at best. It's not Las Vegas. It's not going to have the appeal of Las Vegas. You hold it at Las Vegas, you get in November, you get cool temperatures, and you get the added allure and aura of, it being Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So again, that was something that confused me because I didn't like how they started it in the day. I mean, I understand day to night races. I don't hate day to night races. I kind of like them back in the day. I kind of miss them now, but I don't think that they should occur on Sunday because, the problem is I'm sitting here. And
do you want to know the reason why it's a Sunday race?
Yes, I'd like to hear the reason why.
Okay, I believe it was Bob Pockers who tweeted it, that the reason it's on Sunday is because the Las Vegas Tourist Bureau pays like $2 million for this race weekend to happen.
Okay.
And they want it to be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so more people are there over the weekends to go to the casinos.
Well, that's totally fair, but again...
That's why it's on a Sunday, though. That's why the race is on a Sunday.
But then again, that's totally fair. That's absolutely fair. I don't mind that. But if they're going to fork over $2 million for this thing to happen, and you want so desperately a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event to happen, you're not going to get good weather if you're trying to run this race at 3 p.m. Eastern time on a Sunday. It's going to be hot. You're not going to get enough people that are going to be wanting to go out there, especially not in mid-late September when it's still pretty hot in Vegas. It seems like, again, going back to my desire, I would rather them just do that for the finale, because then you go, okay, Truck champion on Friday, Nationwide or Xfinity champion on Saturday, Cup champion on Sunday. Problem solved. Yeah. And everybody goes home happy because it's cooler. And you can have that. You don't have to have it at night. You can have it during the day. You can have the race end before Sunday Night Football. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Like they did with the Phoenix Championship race.
But it wouldn't be in LA, in Phoenix, excuse me,
Correct.
in Las Vegas, which would be a bigger market that would be more valuable, I would think, to NASCAR.
I agree. I think it'd be a great place. I mean, we talked about this in the past. I think it's one of those tracks that needs to be in a rotation. If they do a true rotation of tracks for hosting the championship race, Las Vegas is absolutely in that conversation.
And like you talked about, the race in the spring was a lot better because the track was cooler, the air temperature was cooler. Well, if we want to have a good race, it's not going to happen in September. It's going to probably happen in November. You're going to get the best race in November at Las Vegas. You know, if you really want an exciting race to end the season on, Las Vegas in November sounds like a great opportunity to make that happen. It'll be just probably a perfect temperature. I would imagine mid 50s, maybe lower 60s. I would imagine. I can't imagine it would be any higher than that. I've never been to Las Vegas, so I don't know what it gets around that time, what the average temperature is around that time.
I think it'd be at least cooler than it is now. I mean,
yeah, it would definitely be cooler than it is now. Now, next year they're moving the race to October. Again, we didn't talk about this when the NASCAR schedule was released, but they're moving this race to October 16th next year, which is not the best date to have a race at Las Vegas. Let's just say, because if you recall, what is the 10-year anniversary of October 16th, 2011 is coming up, and if you don't know what that date is, well, I'm surprised you're listening to this show, to be honest with you, if you don't know what that date is, because it's a date that's etched in my memory forever. It will forever. It's as unforgettable, and this is I don't want to compare these two because they're incomparable by grand scheme of things, but to a race fan, like, I remember this like most people remember 9/11. You know what I mean? I don't want to.
You remember this race like most people remember Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah,
or NASCAR fans. It's a similar.
For NASCAR fans, I guess maybe the 9/11 comparison was off, but but you're talking about an event that you saw on TV that was horrific and shocking to you that impacted you.
If you're going for that,
that's why I'm relating to it. I'm not saying they're on the same level because obviously one is a complete national tragedy and one is just an auto racing tragedy.
Right.
But in terms of emotions, that's kind of what I would equate it to. Those are the kind of emotions that you go through. You're so shocked and horrified by what you're seeing on TV that it's etched in your brain. You remember where you were. You remember what you were doing. You remember every single little part of that day. And I remember that day, October 16th, 2011, literally like it was yesterday. I literally remember the things I was doing on that day. I remember where I was when I watched that accident. I remember, all of this. And we could probably talk about this on October 16th if we want, but I'm just oh God, I am just appalled by that scheduling decision. But we'll see if that maybe makes for a better race, because maybe moving it, 3 weeks ahead could maybe mean a little bit cooler temperatures for the Las Vegas race and maybe make it a better race than what we saw this year. I don't know, maybe the new car is going to turn that all moot, I guess, but I'm curious to see where that goes, I guess. Yeah. If maybe moving it 3 weeks later has any impact on the overall quality of the race, because we haven't even talked about the race, but I didn't really know what else there was to talk about. I mean,
I think the biggest thing to talk about is just that stage 2 decision of the Hendrick pit strategy. That
was really bizarre in and of itself. That was probably the most interesting thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, the winner out of that, the only person who's able to escape that, really, I mean, William Byron kind of escaped it. He had a good car, was Chase. But Kyle Larson was marred back in traffic. Was never able to get back up there. But I didn't understand their decision to not pit during that caution to at least take fuel, splash fuel, where all these other teams are doing it.
NASCAR just gives you some of these cautions. I don't understand why you don't just you should be incorporating some of the stuff into your strategy at some point and kind of know what other people are doing.
Well, the caution was for Gase, and that was
I know that.
But yeah, they gave you something yes, you get 2 guaranteed cautions a race. That's what you get.
So you should be able to strategize around that. That's what I'm saying.
And you knew you weren't going to make, if you pitted during the caution for stage 2 or stage 1, you weren't going to make it all the way to the end of stage 2. So when the Gase caution comes out, which by the way, it sounds like he's okay. He was transported to that was a hard hit.
This is another question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is that car coming apart and crashing as hard as it is? Is that a NASCAR issue, or is that a Rick Ware builds these really bad, unsafe cars issue?
I don't know how to answer that one. I just know it was a very interesting hit. That
I'm gonna pose our listeners to answer that.
Yeah.
Is the Joey Gase crash an accident that NASCAR can do something to address, or is that something that just comes down to Rick Ware building faulty cars?
I'm sure NASCAR is going to look into it.
Because I'm not saying like the lug nut and the wheel coming off. That's not like Rick Ware's fault specifically. I mean, it's a team's kind of failure, but it's not something that had to do with the car. But I've noticed, and I think when we were at Bristol, you noticed James Davison. They unloaded the off the hauler. That car was broken off the hauler.
Yeah.
And so it makes you wonder sometimes, well, if they're just showing up to the track with these cars that are pretty much just barely functioning as race cars.
That's okay that's quote, I'm using air quotes here. That's okay in 1992. That's not acceptable in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, especially when Rick Ware owns 4 freaking charters. You expect the 51, by the way, if the 51, I saw this on Reddit, someone posted like the bottom 30, I think, in points, and then to cigarette bonuses and charters and stuff. The 51, if he loses 2 spots in the overall on those owners' points, the Petty Ware charter will be revoked. Well, because he finished below that in 19 and 20. So 21 would be the 3rd year, and that would revoke it.
Well, that charter would finish below it. That charter, because the way they have it worded, the charter would finish below 3 years in a row. Right. Which they can revoke, which I don't think they've ever had this situation come up, because you can swap charters around, which I'm not a fan of. I think, you stick with the charter. I don't think you should be able to...
But that's like Rick Ware's main charter, is the 51. That's the Petty Ware charter. That's his main one.
Well, he does. Well, that charter might get revoked.
I mean, it's legitimately possible if Cody Ware does not.
Which we'll come into. Like, who do they give that to? When it gets revoked, does NASCAR turn around and sell it again?
They probably have to. Yeah, I would imagine they would just sell it to the highest bidder. They would just give it a starting bid at however much it would normally cost, or however much they value the charter at.
Yeah,
and then just allow people to bid on it from there.
It's not going to be valued very high.
I imagine it would be like, any other, like a police auction or a bank auction, where you just come in, you seize the charter, and you just say, all right, anybody who wants this, we're going to start the bid at this amount, and Petty Ware charter, going once, going twice, sold to whoever, Yeah, it's bad. That's a bad deal.
Why am I rooting for this not to happen? Because I feel like that just turned into a circus, and
it would be a black eye for NASCAR.
It would be a big black eye for NASCAR, because like you said, you just drop police auction like nothing. All you would need is like oh crap, what's the officer's name? Buford T. Justice to be running the police auction here. All right. Toothpick in mouth is like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Oh, okay, we're not going to go that way because I'm not really good at impersonations. But the race itself at Las Vegas is good. Let's bring it back to the race.
The race itself was a race, which
it's a race.
Is something I've said about a lot of Cup races this year. It was a race that happened. When someone asks you about it, hey, write a summary about this race. This race happened. This driver won. What else do I have to say? I have to fill 400 more words. I don't know what to do.
You start talking about the next race, which is going to be at Talladega. I'm not, again, it's this package. I've heard on Door Up and Clear that it might be like a 650 package next year. They're going to split it. I really hope, again, I don't care what it is. This race, I will stand by this. This race would have been a better race if you had low downforce. But you have...
We're not going to talk specifically about the Xfinity race, but I could bring it up, and I could say I thoroughly enjoyed the Xfinity race almost 10 times more than I enjoyed the Cup race, and I'll tell you why. Because the Xfinity race had everything I wanted. It didn't have... the Cup race had some really cool and crazy restarts, but outside of that, the Cup race was entirely forgettable. The Xfinity race did not have really crazy, cool, and wild restarts, but you know what it did have? Close side-by-side racing, passing, comers and goers, tire wear, tire degradation, and interesting pit strategy.
Yep.
And at everything I could ever have asked for in a race. I was thoroughly enjoyed by the Saturday night race. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Actually, I'll be honest with you, the Xfinity race got me so excited because I was like, oh yeah, man, the Cup Series. Oh yeah, wait, don't they have the package that works best for 1.5 milers? Oh, they do. Okay, this might be a good race. And then by the end of the first stage, I was like, wow, this took all the wind out of me. I'm going to watch this wrestling pay-per-view instead. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't. And here's the thing: like that race starts 3, 4, 5 wide are supposed to be exciting, right? I find them utterly boring. I'm like, this isn't racing. This is high speed gambling. Fitting it's in Las Vegas. It's high speed gambling. Like, you don't know what's going to happen next.
Like, Talladega's next week, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I don't get it. So that's Las Vegas. Denny Hamlin won the race. Chase Elliott tried to run him down late in the race, but probably because of that big butt spoiler that's on that car, he couldn't get close enough. Hamlin was too strong. Chase wasn't strong enough.
No, that finish bothered the heck out of me because I'm sitting here thinking, man, I saw guys in the Xfinity race all Saturday run down and catch the leader.
Yep.
It was possible.
Yep.
I saw it happen all race. Josh Berry did it, but it wasn't just him. It happened in the first 2 stages too. Yep. Guys, leaders would just be gone, and then the second place guy would run him down and pass him, and it was like, all right, this is good. This is good stuff. As soon as I remember the commentators, Rick Allen's like, is he going to get to the back of the 11? And I'm like, if he does, he's not going to pass him.
Yeah.
And I was right, because he did get just barely there. He got within about a car length, maybe half a car length of him.
Yeah.
And then just stalled out. And I was like, I saw that happening. I knew, I was like, that's going to happen. He's going to get, and Chase, this is the thing that bothered me the most, is that Chase clearly, anybody who's watching this, Chase Elliott clearly has the better car. He has the better tires. He has the better everything than Hamlin. But because Hamlin has clean air and track position, he could block the track, run whatever line he wants, and be totally fine.
What would he do when Chase had that run around the outside? What would Hamlin do the next lap around? Ran the high side, forced Chase to go low. His car wasn't as good there, and Hamlin had to run off the top side. Whereas, the Xfinity Series, you could reverse those roles, and you could get side by side.
Yeah, they get side by side.
Yeah, we beat that horse. We've beat that horse to death so much that there's nothing left. There's nothing materialistically left of that horse.
I feel like the entirety of this race, this is the thing that's crazy to me, is if you've looked, I don't know if you've seen the Jeff Gluck poll, but it's entirely flipped from last week. Like last week, everybody agreed Bristol was awesome. Everybody loved Bristol. It was the best race of all time. We go to Las Vegas, which again had a really solid, pretty good spring race, and everybody unanimously pans. It's like, this is awful. This is garbage. This is terrible. This is
okay. Well, woo, wow. 18.
Totally opposite.
We are like a plug for Jeff Gluck here. Jeff, we promise we're not just robbing you off. We're giving you some props here. We know you don't want to do it anymore. But currently, as of 12:33 on September 28th, 12:33 in the morning, there's 18,204 votes cast. 23% say yes, it was a good race. 77% say it was a no, and there's 8 hours 43 minutes left.
77% of NASCAR fans know that NASCAR can do better, and they did on Saturday.
And I know, like, some people have brought up, and I think we may have even brought it up on here as well, I can't remember, that the poll could be fans saying, hey, it's biased. No, it's a 750 package. I'm going to vote no every time. All right, I don't care how good of a race it was or who won. I'm going to vote no every time. But that should say something, even though that's not the way you should vote. All right, do you think it was a good race or no? All right, in general, when you look at the whole scheme, was it a good race or no? But the fans are saying the 750 package doesn't do anything for me. All right, it doesn't do anything for me. I don't like it. It doesn't produce the racing I'm looking for. So they're clearly saying, I don't care that the first 6 laps of a restart are side by side drafting. That doesn't do anything for me. I want a guy 20 laps into a run who saved his tires or didn't run as hard, able to go up and pass the 5 cars in front of him and leapfrog the field and gain track position instead of being stuck behind someone or having to wait for the car in front of me to be held up by lap traffic and lose his momentum. That's what NASCAR's fans are saying here. So when you look at Darlington and Atlanta's different. We look at Darlington, they like what they see there. When you run Bristol, they like what they see there. What do they have in common? Dover too. What do they have in common? Low downforce, high horsepower. Now I will say this again. We can move on then to the IndyCar. That if you run the 550 horsepower and you have low downforce, this race is going to be better. It doesn't matter what the horsepower is, to an extent, right? You don't want to go out there with 38 horsepower. But you go out there with 550 horsepower in low downforce. Maybe get the cars off the ground, sucked off the ground a little bit too. Take some engineering out of it. You're going to have a better race every darn time. Just go look at the Xfinity Series. Okay, on to Long Beach in IndyCar. Rob, let's just start this thing off with a warm-up session. Have you ever seen Helio Castroneves that mad before? I mean, I thought Portland he was mad, but this was like a new level.
I don't even know what to say. In fact, the whole IndyCar race weekend was just in general pretty wild because you're talking about warm up, but heck, even in the qualifying, you had some controversy. You had Ed Jones went off in the final sector, I think it was, and stopped, and they threw a yellow, and this was like right when guys were getting ready, like right at the very end of the session, and so. It was Rosenquist. Rosenquist went through the yellow and at basically full speed. Through the yellow zone, basically full speed. Pato O'Ward does the same thing, gets penalized. And or doesn't do the same thing, excuse me. He slows down and gets penalized, I guess. And Schmidt, the Arrow McLaren Schmidt Peterson guys were like, hey, we actually have the data in front of us that says Rosenquist didn't slow down and that Pato did. You're penalizing the wrong people. And they're like, well, we're trying to win a championship, so by doing this, you're screwing us. And they were not happy about that. So you had controversy there. And then you fast forward to the practice, the warm-up session. Alexander Rossi is coming out of the pits, okay? And Elio is on a flyer lap, whatever. Yeah. And Rossi just straight cuts off Elio. I mean, he cuts him off. Like, I saw the video. And I saw the replay, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, dude, Rossi just cut him off. Like, he didn't give him any room. He didn't care that he was on a flyer. Like, Rossi's just come out of the pits. He's on cold tires. It's a warm-up session. It's a morning warm-up session. And he gives Elio no room, no space, no slack, who's on a flying lap. If I'm sitting here, if I'm Elio, I'm just as pissed as him. I mean, Rossi, they ask Rossi. Rossi's like, well, I don't care. Whatever. And Elio's out here dropping F-bombs on Peacock.
Yeah, I know.
And have you ever heard Elio swear? Because I never have.
I don't think I've ever heard him say pissed before. So to hear him say pissed and then drop fudge on... No,
I've heard him say pissed before. Edmonton 2010. I've heard him say pissed.
Well, that's a long time ago.
Doesn't matter. I still never forgot that because he got screwed out of that race and I haven't forgot about it. Brian Barnhart screwed him out of that race and I'll never forget about it.
I haven't heard him say anything like that before. He's always been calm, cool, and collected. Like, that's what shocked me about Portland 2 weeks ago. I'm like, dang, he's mad. He's mad. That was like puppy dog tantrum compared to what we saw next to his pit box there after that. I thought he was going to bite Kevin Lee's head off.
Kevin Lee was probably worried for. He's like, I didn't do anything. I just asked a question.
Yeah, he's like,
I'm just doing my job. Please don't hurt me.
Yeah, he's like, guys, I'm not going to ask him another question. I'm going to walk away.
Exactly. I think as reporters, you get to that point where you're like, all right, I'm this driver is way too heated. I'm going to go let him calm down, and then I'm going to talk to him. I'm not going to. I mean, it might be better TV in the moment. It might give me better quotes, but. At what cost? my life.
I also would have asked the question behind a fence. Like, you're standing on that side, I'm going to stand on this side. We're going to 6 feet apart here. We're going to have a fence between us. Yeah, we're going to take these whatever county Long Beach is in protocols to the extreme. It might be Los Angeles County. I don't know. But we're just gonna. Yeah, that was. I didn't see that until like late last night because I watched the race today. After work, so I watched the race basically 24 hours later. But when I saw that after work Sunday night, I'm like, whoa, that's mad. Then you do the race. What in the world was Ed Jones?
Okay, first of all, you had the problem with the two main title contenders. Palou and O'Ward did not qualify super well.
That's true.
And whereas Newgarden got the pole. And finally. So that was like, I mean, it was going to be very difficult for anyone but Palou to win the race. But now you have the top two guys are in the middle field. Yeah, going into that race, you're like, okay, well, Newgarden and Dixon are 1-2, and Award and Palou are like 9-10. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, okay, this could get spicy a little bit if pit strategy fails, or if one of them has a problem back in the pack on the restart, gets bad because you know how starts at Long Beach are. Like I said, I was talking about it last week. It's Long Beach and Portland are two of the tracks that probably IndyCar needs to legitimately consider standing starts for, because even on Sunday, you had about the first half of the cars were lined up and coming to the green, and the last half were still pacing coming into the final corner. It's just not fair. I mean, if you start like 12th on back, you're screwed. You're never going to get a good start. Everybody's going to be gone in front of you, and you're going to be behind before the green flag even waves, or just as the green flag waves.
Yeah.
That's another point, but it made for a very interesting dynamic those first couple of laps, and then as you say, you move on. The championship kind of just dried up when Ed Jones clips Pato O'Ward and turns him around, and by that point, it's like, okay, well, it's done, it's over, bye. Yeah. But actually, it did have championship implications, because I don't think where did Pato finish in the championship? Did he dropped down to third, didn't he?
At least dropped down to third. Now that I don't think Dixon had to win.
Newgarden finished second, so that's why I'm wondering, did he move up to second in the points?
Yes. Newgarden finished second in the points.
That's
yes, an Award. Yeah. If Dixon had won the race, then Award would have dropped down to fourth.
Yeah. So
that was their worry at that point. But Arrow
McLaren just had a really rough weekend with Pato in general. Yeah. It's not during qualifying. And then then during the race, and when you have that situation, and that's a hard thing to judge. Did Award have, or did Ed Jones have the corner? Well, no, I can tell you that straight up, he didn't have the corner.
He did not have the corner. No,
and that's probably why it was probably his last race in IndyCar. I don't want to say, but because I've liked Ed Jones for a while, but I think this year and his stint with Ganassi has kind of showed us that he's. Maybe not quite cut out for this IndyCar stuff. Maybe might want to see what IMSA team gives you a ride for next year. Or at the very least, I guess, as we were talking about, maybe see what AJ Foyt's willing to have for you. If you're content being, 15th, see what AJ Foyt's got for you. But anyway, that was just an unfortunate deal, because then that just any chance that we had at an interesting points battle kind of just dried up, and then it was like, all right, well, Palou just has to finish the race, and we can put the crown on him, which he ended up doing. He finished the race. I can't remember where he finished.
He finished fourth.
He finished fourth. Okay, so yeah, he did pretty well. So he probably, even regardless, I think.
What you don't know,
Pato.
What you don't know is that if Pato is all of a sudden running up front, does Palou make a mistake trying to push it? That's not really been his mantra this year. But does something else happen? There's a pit strategy call not go right. You don't know how things play out that way. Yeah, sure, he finished fourth, but does it stay that way if Pato's winning the race? In that,
I think even then, Palou was going to have to like DNF in order for Pato to have any chance. And Pato was going to have to win the race, and Palou was going to have to DNF. And that was pretty much the only way it was going to happen. So even if, if let's say that your scenario happened, even if that's the case, I still think Ganassi just tells Palou, hey, don't worry about it. Finish 10th. Nobody cares. You'll win the championship.
Oh, yeah.
You just hang around and ride.
He had to finish 12th. He had to finish 13th, I think.
I think it was 14th.
14th? Okay.
Yeah.
So it was just, it wasn't going to happen. He had too good of a car. Not no one else behind him was strong enough to really compete there. And then down towards the end of the race, we have a couple guys drop out. One of them was Award, but Grosjean missed out on Rookie of the Year. That was you could tell he was very disappointed sitting there on the pit wall. But I love how the IndyCar fan base has just totally wrapped their arms around him, and he couldn't even continue smiling. He still turned his head and like, dang it, I can't believe we just missed out on that.
This is something that's interesting, and I don't want to take anything away from Scott McLaughlin winning the Rookie of the Year. I don't want to take anything away from him, but I think it's very interesting to me to see that McLaughlin just narrowly lost Rookie of the Year honors to someone who didn't even run a full season.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that speaks more to Grosjean and his ability, or if that is like, oh man, Scott McLaughlin kind of had an okay season, but a relatively rough year. But now, as again, I didn't want to crap on him that much. I didn't want to bring him down because he does have something that he could take pride out of this. Not just Rookie of the Year, McLaughlin, but he was also the only driver. Apparently, I read this. He was the only driver all year to finish every race. He was running at the finish in every race this season.
Yeah,
so,
I
know what?
I don't remember a race he DNF'd.
I think based on that, I think that kind of puts that to be moot. You know,
well,
the fact of the matter is he didn't crash. He didn't have mechanical problems. He kept the car in one piece, took good care of it, brought it home every single race. And I think for a rookie, there's not very many rookies that could probably ever say that. I mean, he's on Max Chilton's the other one. He has the record for being the only Formula One rookie to finish every Grand Prix. He could take that. He'll never lose that probably. Let's be honest. I mean, as soon as Tsunoda and Mazepin and Schumacher all crashed, I was like, hey, Max Chilton probably sits there and thinks, hey, I still got the record.
I think McLaughlin, though, he's learning a new car, right? He's learning a new type of car. Grosjean's been doing open wheel. So where did Scott finish 14th in the overall standings? That's not awful. I don't think, especially for a rookie. I mean, I would have guessed, honestly, if you would have guessed me or asked me at the beginning of the year, which we didn't, I would have thought he'd been more down the 18-19 range. And Grosjean would have been around like the 15-16 range, which he was. Jimmy Johnson, I also just running a 13. Well, now.
But hey, Johnson has had, you're speaking of Jimmy Johnson. I don't want to interrupt you, but hey, man, Johnson has gotten his best 2 finishes in IndyCar the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
So that is a very, very high mark for Johnson to end on. And especially like if we talk about if Jimmy Johnson's going to run ovals next year, I think he has a better chance to compete and win on an oval than he does on a road course right now. Yeah. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I think Jimmy could potentially get his first top 10, maybe at an oval in IndyCar, which would be great for him. Yeah. Because like I said, if you're going for, he said like mid-teens was his goal for the rest of the year, was trying to get into the mid-teens, and he's done that. He's done that now. He's 17th, 16th, 18th.
17, yeah, 2 back-to-back 17th place finishes.
Back-to-back 17th place finishes, which is pretty decent, given where he started. Given where he started at the beginning of the season and given where he's ended the season, I don't know if you could specifically say maybe the progress isn't as visual to the naked eye or to the casual race fan, but at the very least to me, that's a very big step up from, again, somebody who's learning an entirely different car. McLaughlin has that advantage that the supercars they don't have the same amount of downforce as an IndyCar, but it's both the IndyCar and the supercar definitely have way less downforce than the NASCAR does right now. I will say that. The current supercar chassis and the current IndyCar chassis definitely have less downforce than the Cup car, which is probably why you saw McLaughlin having a little bit easier transition than Johnson. But I think, again, if Johnson had been running some ovals, you probably would have seen him start to compete for some top 10s and stuff like that. But overall, just an interesting Rookie of the Year battle, because, again, it wasn't really a Rookie of the Year. You're talking about a Supercars champion, Formula One podium finisher, and a 7-time NASCAR champion, and you're going to sit here and tell me these guys are rookies? These are not rookies. It's not a Rookie of the Year. It's a best newcomer challenge, basically.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. And one thing I was going to say about Jimmy Johnson, he wasn't one big note where you could say his improvement is. I mean, other than Nashville, which was a struggling weekend, he wasn't spinning out as much the second half of the year compared to the first half, which to me, all right, I know where the footing of this car is. I know what the limits are. Now let's start pushing those limits. And now I took me a few races to find where those limits were at, find where the 4 corners of the car are, So I have high hopes for Johnson. I don't think he's going to win a race next year, but I have high hopes that he can finish in the top 10 this time next year on a road course. And I like you agree that you put him on an oval at whether that's Texas, Indy, Iowa, or Gateway. I think he can get a top 10, and that would be a confidence booster. we all know that. Like, look, half a racing game, half a sport is confidence. If you don't have the confidence, you're not going to perform. And Jimmy, unfortunately, he hasn't visited victory lane since June 2017. Right? It's been that long. And but he's having fun. He's enjoying it, which is good. And will he visit victory lane next year? I don't think so. But if he can get top 10s, that's vast improvement. To talk about Alex Palou real quick in his title, did you expect this? I didn't expect this when it was announced that he was coming to Ganassi. But
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I ever expect anybody other than Scott Dixon anymore to win the championship. I mean, I just it's become just, like, okay, it's going to be Dixon and maybe Newgarden are probably going to be. And guess what? It was Dixon and Newgarden who ended up coming down, but they didn't win it. They were bested by Pato and Palou, which was a pleasant surprise. And no, I don't think I saw this coming at all, especially not based on Palou's season in 2020. I did not think that Palou had the most impressive season in 2020. But granted, I knew what he could accomplish. I'd watched him in Super Formula before, so I knew that he was obviously a very talented race car driver. But I also at the same time was like, okay, this is a new series for him. He's never run ovals before. It's going to take some time, and I didn't realize that as soon as he got to Ganassi, I don't know if maybe sometimes I believe that it's all Dario. It's all Dario's coaching, because I truly believe sometimes that it is Dario's coaching for some of those new drivers. Because I look, and I have proof of that. If you look at Kimball's early years, or the first couple of years that Kimball or second or third, there was a period of time there between, I would say, like 2013 and 2015. Where Kimball, or maybe even 2016, where Charlie Kimball was really coming into his own. Like, Charlie Kimball was quickly becoming and establishing himself as like a front runner and a threat to win races. He wasn't a race. He only had one win under his belt, but he was becoming a threat to win races. Then they added Max Chilton in 2016, and even Sage Karam in 2015. I really feel sometimes that Dario had a huge impact on not just Karam's ability to drive the race car, but then also Chilton's ability to drive the race car, Kimball's ability to drive the race car. I think Ganassi, as long as he is incorporating Dario Franchitti as a driver coach, those drivers, because I look at what Marcus Ericsson is doing. Marcus Ericsson is far and above a far better IndyCar driver with Ganassi than he ever was when he was with Schmidt Peterson. Or McLaren, whatever. I think him getting the boot from McLaren was probably the best thing could ever happen, because it opened up this opportunity for him to go to Ganassi and then learn under Dario, who is somebody that has won IndyCar championships, has won Indy 500s, knows IndyCar inside and out, knows how to drive these pretty much every track on the circuit. He's an invaluable asset to Chip Ganassi Racing, and I think Palou's championship, and then in addition to Ericsson's got 2 wins, had 2 wins this year, and he was briefly in the title hunt. It was going to be tough for him to really be a contender, but he was in the title hunt briefly.
He finished 6th in the standings. That's where he finished. He finished 6th.
He was. There was a period of time there though when he was 5th, where he was legitimately mathematically eligible. He was mathematically eligible. And that is leaps and bounds ahead of where he was in 2020 and in 2019.
Yeah.
So again, I think a lot of that comes down to Dario and his ability to teach these guys how to run these cars. And like I said, guys who have left Ganassi, they had great, strong form, and then as soon as they have left Ganassi, they've dropped their form. I look at Kimball, I look at Chilton, I look at even Tony Kanaan in some respects, but though I don't believe Tony Kanaan had anything to do with needed much teaching from Franchitti, but even then, you look at that and you kind of makes you think, okay, well, how much was Dario how much was the difference Dario? And I really have attributed and have believed that it's a lot of Dario. So no, I can't say I saw this coming, but given Dario's history working with some of these young drivers, I think that it was only a matter of time before it happened, and it just happened a lot sooner than I thought it would.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see a new face. Certainly win the championship. It's been a while since we've had I guess, when was the last first-time champion? When Newgarden, when he won Pagano, right? When he won? No, Newgarden in 17. We've had guys win a championship recently for the first time, but such a young face, such a unseasoned driver win, and that's what's nice because Newgarden been here for a few years, Pagano been here for a few years, so
Newgarden and Pagano both had miles more experience in American Open racing than Palou did. Right. Pagano had been out of it. Excuse me. Pagano was in Champ Car in 07, then went sports car racing after Champ Car folded up, came back in 2011 and 2012 to run some races for Schmidt, and then committed full-time to Schmidt through 14. But Newgarden had come up. He had run GP3, European F3, but then came through the Road to Indy program ladder, won the Indy Lights champion, got that deal with Sarah Fisher-Hartman, Sarah Fisher Racing, Sarah Fisher-Hartman, Carpenter Fisher-Hartman, Ed Carpenter, and then moving on to Penske. So even then, those guys had way more time over here in the States than Palou has. Palou spent more time over in Europe and Japan than he has in the United States, and he's already got a championship. So, and even then, I forgot Pagano was in Atlantics before he got to Champ Car. So Pagano was in Atlantics even. So even Pagano had more experience coming through the ranks in American Open racing than Palou did. So it's just great to see. It's a great victory for Palou. I know we're really hitting the time limit here, so I think
Herta won the race. Colton Herta won the race.
I was just about to say Colton Herta won the race, by the way. And now I think I want to talk about F1 because I have quite a bit
you talk about F1 because unfortunately I only was able to watch the first 18 laps, and then I had to hit the road to go to work that day.
So sorry because you missed the craziest ending.
Of a race. My store manager is an F1 fan, and we were talking about today, and he was kind of describing some of it to me, and I'm like, why in the world did this have to happen in Russia? But that's great. I mean, tell everyone about it.
I a lot of people have criticized the Sochi circuit, but I've always felt like it doesn't deserve the criticism it gets. I think it's a lot more. It has to do a lot more with how the drivers drive the racetrack than how the racetrack itself is. Because I think the racetrack itself has plenty of really good passing zones. I think despite the fact that it's flat, I think it has very interesting elements to it that provide a different challenge against the drivers, especially that long turn 2 complex that can really strain your neck after a while. That could pose a significant challenge to drivers who are in their peak physical condition, especially with their neck strength, their neck conditioning, stuff like that. So I think it's a very good racetrack, and I'm glad that it kind of got to show it was this week. Because it's one of those tracks that it has a perfect DRS range. I mean, DRS makes such a big difference at Sochi. And not just DRS, but also just in general, these cars poking such a big hole in the air. Because you saw it not just in the F3 race, not just in the F2 races, but also in the F1 races, that the draft meant so much at Sochi. And as long as you could sniff the tiniest draft off the car in front, I mean, you could slipstream them and have a great shot at them into that next overtaking position. And we really saw that overall throughout the whole weekend was at Sochi. But really, the start was very clean, but also hectic. So that start of that race, I was like, oh man, we're going to have a big pileup going into turn 1. Because I think it was, I think they showed the onboard of Norris, who got that, he didn't have the best start. He lost some time to Carlos Sainz. Or no,
Sainz
it was
Sainz. Lead. Right?
Yeah, who was the car? It was Hamilton. It was Hamilton. I'm sorry. Hamilton got he didn't have the best start. Hamilton didn't have the best start. But all he had to do was stay right in behind Sainz and Lando. And he just, he was like, bye, later guys, I'm going to fly through up here. But then a bunch of cars passed him on the outside and they were drafting all over the place. But man, it was, that start, the first few laps were really entertaining and really crazy, and then you get into some of the tire strategy. I was intrigued by some of the tire strategy that we saw. It definitely seemed like starting on the hard tires was, I think, the more conservative route, whereas starting on the mediums was more of like, all right, let's try and get up as many positions as we can, and then we'll pit early. Which I was curious. I was wondering why Williams did that to Russell. I felt like they had the track position given the third place, but I guess they felt like they wouldn't have been able to keep the pace up, which is why they went ahead and scrapped the mediums for the hards as early as they did. I think it was like between lap 9 and 12, somewhere around there, that I think they pitted Russell which was, I felt, really early. But hey, Russell rebounded for points, so I guess it all kind of worked out.
Yeah.
In the end. But yeah, that was just interesting. I was kind of curious there. But in general, overall, the pit strategy was crazy. But let's talk about the finish. Let's talk about how this goes. Because they're talking about rain like all race. Because there's a threat of rain. They're showing the radar. Rain's moving in. It's kind of there. It's maybe there. But then they're like, rain is just north of us. It was just northwest of them. So it wasn't entirely impossible for the winds to shift and blow that whole cell towards Sochi. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think a lot of the drivers and a lot of the teams were kind of monitoring that, and more so the teams and less so the drivers were kind of monitoring that and kind of being like, it could rain, but we're not really banking on it, And then you get into the final 10 laps, and we're like, oh hey, okay, rain's here, it's coming, rain is coming. And I think that this is what caused the biggest challenge. And I said it in the moment, and I still stand by it. I don't really blame McLaren. I don't blame Lando Norris. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I think when you look at the situation, they had rain. They were talking about rain. It was raining real heavy in turn 5 and 6. It's like, okay, well, it's raining real heavy in one part of the track. So when it's raining real heavy in one part of the track, guaranteed, all right, I have to slow down here, and I'm going to lose a little bit of time here. But you also have to ask yourself, okay, that the other driver is going to have to lose time too. If I can try and make up time while he's losing time, then I can keep the gap, keep the distance good. That's what Lando Norris is thinking. Now, the thing that you go with that is, okay, it's only raining in one part of the track. How hard is it raining? Well, the team, this is where I think it's a team loss. It's a driver and a team loss for McLaren. And I don't think there's any one person you can blame, because I think there was a lot of people who are blaming some people, the people who weren't feeling bad for Lando, I guess. If you didn't feel bad for Lando, most people were like, he did it to himself. He specifically ignored the team's calls to bring him in. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to defend Lando here. Because when you're in that situation, I had to keep in mind, I had to remember myself the whole time I'm watching this race, because I don't know how bad it's raining there. I don't have the data in front of me. I don't have the radar in front of me. I'm not there at the racetrack. But my gut feeling that whole time is stay out. You have 3 laps. There is no way. There is even if there is a way, it's a very small chance that the whole track is going to become soaked in 3 laps. It did. Yeah. How the hell was I going to know that? How the hell is Lando going to know that? Because Lando is driving in it. So the team is going to tell Lando, okay, hey, according to the radar, rain is here, rain is here, rain is here. Lando is the one driving the car. Lando is the one who can feel how the car is reacting. Lando knows how wet the track is. If Lando is making the decision here, okay, the track is still dry, I can make it, let's stay out, and the team is telling him, hey, box. At some point, I don't think McLaren can blame Lando. I don't think Lando can blame himself, because he's one out there driving. It just so happens that when he gets around to that same exact spot the next lap, it's entirely drenched. Now, how's he going to know that? How's anybody going to know that? Mercedes, and what Mercedes did. Now, Lewis Hamilton also said, no, I don't want to pit for inters. I think it's too slick. And Mercedes basically said, no, Lewis, we're putting our foot down. You're coming in, you're pitting, regardless of whether or not you like it. You're boxing this lap, and, if you don't like it, you don't have to drive for us anymore. Now, I'm not saying they said it like that. I don't think they said it like that. I don't think they would. But the idea was like, Lewis, we're doing it. You're boxing. This is a team order, Whereas McLaren kind of let Lando have a little bit more freedom, be like, okay, you're driving the car. You know better than we do. We might feel the rain and see the radar, but you're driving the car. You know how it's going to react. Yeah. Mercedes made that call basically at the exact time that the rains opened up, that the clouds opened up and the whole track became flooded. You know what I mean? Yeah. McLaren and Lando made a different call at the same time. And I think, again, you're looking at the situation where you are operating on the thinnest of margins. I mean, you literally saw it pay off for one driver and fail for another. I think if in an alternate universe where McLaren decides to stop and Hamilton doesn't, everybody looks and says, oh, McLaren is really smart. McLaren is really smart. Lando is really smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just so happened, it was literally a 50-50 chance. You had to make the decision. You either stay out or you box. You have to commit. And at some point there, you have to commit. You cannot just mosey around and wait and say, we might pit next lap. We'll see. Lando, do you think you have to make that decision. You have to say, no, we're staying out, or no, we're pitting, and just stick with it. They had to stick with it. Once they had committed, once Lando said, no, I think it's fine. I think the track is fine. I could still drive. McLaren had to be like, all right, we're committing. We're committing to staying out. We're committing to staying out. And it ended up costing them a race. You can't blame anybody in that situation because of the reasons I already stated. It was just Mercedes and Lewis were right and McLaren and Lando were wrong, and we see how it ended up. But like I said, I just don't think you could place any blame on here. But it was very interesting because you see these races all the time, where they always have like the threat of rain. They're like, rain will be here like within the final 10 laps, and they always say rain is coming, but the rain never comes. And this time, the rain actually came, and we saw just again how thin those margins are and how difficult it is to make that call in the moment. But overall, I really, really enjoyed the F1 race. That was bonkers from the start, first and foremost. There was lots of action going on all throughout the race. I have really fallen in love with F1 over the past... I mean, I loved F1. I've loved F1 for a while, for at least over 10 years now. But in the last 3 or 4, I don't know what it's been, but there's... I don't know if the series has gotten more parity or what, but man, it's like every race nowadays. Crazy. I mean, we were about to see McLaren win back-to-back races. There was even a chance. There was a legitimate chance that I was like, once Sainz took the lead on that first lap, I was like, dude, could we be seeing Ferrari get their first win this season?
I was thinking too.
And then Lando caught and passed him, and I was like, man, could we see McLaren get both their drivers in victory lane this season? It's like, man, 3 years ago, that's not even possible 3 years ago.
No.
That's not even a legitimate thought. They're just hoping to get 5th in Constructors' Championship 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And here they are competing for 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, having a legitimate shot at getting both of their drivers in victory lane, scoring podiums with both of their drivers. I mean, this F1 is fun to watch right now. And I'm really excited for what the rest of the season holds, for what the championship fight holds. Because, again, Max Verstappen, hey, let's talk about the championship. Because there was a legitimate point there where Verstappen was out of the points. He had to start dead last. Bottas was to start in front of him. You're sitting here thinking, all right, Lewis is going to probably take a huge cut and chunk into Max's points lead. But no, Verstappen drives from dead last on the grid to second. How how can you not look at that and say that is one of the most impressive drives? And yeah, you could say he had the rain to help him probably, but to come from 20th, from dead last, and to finish second, and to prevent Lewis, who won the race, from eating more into his championship lead. Oh my gosh.
I feel like we've said this before, and it could very well ring true multiple times. But if Max wins the championship, he can point to Russia and say, we won it that day. Even though he left 2 points behind, he could say, we won it that day. And that to me is whatever you want to say about the Italian Grand Prix and whether you thought Max's move was immature, showed his signs of immaturity as a race car driver, as a person, his after action. He had to be mature to drive through the field like that, and not to let, I have 19 cars in front of me, I'm never going to get to the front. Get to him, because even before the first pit cycle, he was up to 13th or 12th, something like that.
Remember, he had to race Valtteri Bottas as well.
Yes,
so he's racing another Mercedes who started in front of him in 19th.
Yes.
The whole time as well. He's carving his way through the field, and he's basically got to hold off a Mercedes because he's got to finish ahead of the Mercedes for the points championship, first and foremost, but then he's got to be in front of the Mercedes for the overall race as well.
Yeah. I'm bummed I didn't get to watch this race to its entirety because it played out so well. And it's one of those.
It's one of those races where everybody was like, it's Russia. It's not going to be that good. And then everybody who didn't watch it was like, wait, are you kidding me? There was a good Russian Grand Prix? What?
Yes.
Like, yes, you missed a great race. F1 this year cannot do anything wrong right now. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's kind of been a theme this year, right? It's not going to be a good race. Don't watch it. All of a sudden, it's like, this is a great race. What is going on? That's been 2021. Well, yeah, Rob, I think we need to mosey on to the next one here, and that's the weekend wrap-up. So why don't you summarize the weekend for everyone?
All right, talking about some of the sport races from the weekend. The ARCA Menard Series West race at the Las Vegas Bull Ring. Taylor Gray was the victor there. Then the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series ran their race at Las Vegas. Christian Eckes was the victor. That was his first career truck victory. And Thor Sport Racing had a 1-2-3-4 finish. The first time that has happened in Truck Series history. Huge for Thor Sport. Big for Christian Eckes. Definitely, he's glad to get that monkey off of his back. He definitely looked like someone who was very happy to win that race. Yeah. Definitely, I forgot what he even looked like. I was like, that's what he looks like. He looks old. He looks a lot older than the last time I saw him.
Yeah.
Then the NASCAR Xfinity Series was at Las Vegas. We already talked about how great of a race that was. But Josh Berry ended up winning that race. That's his second career Xfinity race. He was subbing for Michael Annett. And they talked about him. Okay, he's going to go run full time next year for JRM. Whew. Josh Berry, man.
He's looking good. I forgot to note two things here. That was the first time JRM went 1-2-3 in team history. And it's the first time that all four cars have reached victory lane in a season for them.
Boy.
So because Barry won in the 8 earlier this year, won in the 1 this past weekend, and obviously Allgaier and Gregson have gone to victory lane. So first time all four cars have gone to victory lane.
That's great for Dale Jr., man. And that's great for Josh Berry as well, showing that he can go from one team to another and still win. He can go from one type of track to another type of track and still win.
It just shows his maturity, too. Talking about Max, his maturity. Watch the first few races of this year, then go watch the past couple ones. Quick learner.
Oh, yeah. Very quick learner. It's very fun to watch Josh Berry. It was just fun to watch that Xfinity race.
It was a great Xfinity race.
Saturday races, man, they're the ones to tune in for. I can't wait. I mean, Talladega is a different beast, but once we get past Talladega, I'm like, I'm all in on the Xfinity Series. I care a lot more about this series. I'm going to give my full attention to this series and maybe sit on my phone for most of the Cup races.
What about the Roval?
Roval's Roval. Roval's going to be good no matter what.
Okay.
Anyway, let's talk about the F2 and F3 race at weekend. So this was something that kind of frustrated me. I got really upset about this. So they shortened the weekend a little bit because of the rain. Because we had really bad rain on Friday and Saturday, like almost monsoon conditions, basically. Like Sochi was flooded at one point during the last week. So what they ended up doing was they canceled one of the F3 races, one of the F2 races, and kind of moved the schedule around. So there were supposed to be like 6 support races in total. We only got 4. It kind of changes. Points championship would have shaken up. And the F3 championship, we'll talk about who won. So it didn't really matter for that, but it was still kind of disappointing because I didn't know they were going to move the race up. So I kind of slept in on that Friday because I had a long night. I have long days on Friday. I have really long nights on Fridays. So I tend to sleep in a little bit more, get a little bit more sleep than I need to. And I woke up right as the race ended, and I woke up and I'm like, wait a minute, what? There was a race? Well, they moved the race, but I thought it was supposed to be. And they just ran this race. I was completely asleep when they made the announcement, so I didn't even get to watch the race. But it is what it is. But in F2, we'll talk about F2. Race 1 was won by Dan Ticktum, which is very interesting because apparently Trevor Carlin made a comment over the weekend where he said he likes Dan Ticktum in IndyCar.
Ooh, there you go.
Carlin maybe wants to expand to a second car. If they let Max Chilton come back, maybe they'll pick up Dan Ticktum, who is currently racing for them in F2. Maybe interesting development. Now, I don't know. Maybe Trevor Carlin would like to run Dan in one of his IndyCar programs. Maybe. We'll see. But definitely since Ticktum split with the Williams Driver Academy earlier this year, his prospects of potentially getting an F1 ride are very slim. Perhaps he could be looking at IndyCar as a legitimate option if Trevor Carlin would like to take him. It all comes down to what Dan wants to do, because I think Dan himself is someone who's like, hey, it's F1 or nothing for me. If I can't get to F1, I'm just going to call it quits. So he might not even want to come over to IndyCar. But hey, you look at all the drivers who have gone over there, found success. We're talking about Palou. We're talking about Grosjean. We're talking about guys who, even guys who made it to F1, guys who couldn't make it to F1 are still being able to find themselves, have really good, solid careers in IndyCar. We'll see. But Dan Ticktum won the first race. The second race was canceled. And then the third race, Oscar Piastri was able to win that race and extend his points lead. So now it's going to be really, really tough, I think, for Guan Yu Zhou and Robert Schwartzman to catch him unless Piastri has a disastrous next 2 rounds. It's just going to be I think Piastri is going to have the championship, but then that would throw a big wrench into Piastri's entire career, because he couldn't return to F2 if he wins the championship. And since there's only one
bullcrap rule, by the way.
Yeah. And because there's only one seat remaining in on the F1 grid for next year, he would have to basically hope and pray somehow that he can get picked up by Alfa Romeo. Granted, Alfa Romeo apparently is interested in Guan Yu Zhou, who is second in the championship, and also an Alpine Academy driver, which is interesting as well. Driver academies, I guess, mean not much unless you're in a Red Bull.
Yeah.
Or Ferrari, for that matter.
Yeah,
unless your name's Leclerc or Schumacher, you're probably not going to get to drive a Ferrari or a Haas car, even if you're in the Ferrari Driver Academy.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting to see that. Piastri is obviously having one of the quickest. I mean, he was outstanding in F3 last year. He won the F3 championship, and now he's come up to F2, and he's probably going to win the F2 championship. Now, this would be one of the fastest rises of any champion, because usually, even you win F3 championship, it still takes you like a year or so to get an F2 championship under your belt. But this could be back-to-back championships for Piastri, and if he doesn't get to F1, I think it would be a huge disservice to him, because I've also heard, and not to tangent more, but I've also heard that Teo Polcher is under serious consideration for Alfa Romeo. So Alfa Romeo apparently is keeping serious tabs on F2, considering both Guan Yu Zhou and Teo Polcher. They also have Antonio Giovinazzi, who, if they want to re-sign, they can. But then you also have Piastri, who's going to basically be begging for a ride at the end of F2 if he wins the championship. Don't know what's going to happen. Could be like last year, where we all thought it was going to be Callum Ilott going to Haas or getting an Alfa Romeo seat, and he ends up in IndyCar this year, and Mazepin goes in. It could be just someone writes a big check and gets that Alfa Romeo seat. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Now, in F3, we have a champion. Like we said, we crowned a champion. Dennis Hauger won the championship, but race number 1 was won by American prospect Logan Sargent, who, again, should definitely have an F2 ride for next year. If there's an F2 ride seat open, it should go to Logan Sargent. Now, again, he doesn't have any funding. This could be where his career ends. But I want to talk about race 2, race 3. Race 2 was canceled. Race 3. Jack Doohan won the race. Jack Doohan had won the race for Trident. Now, this was crazy, because Trident was going for the team's championship. And they had 2 drivers, 1-2, in Jack Doohan and Ollie Caldwell. Or not Ollie Caldwell, excuse me. Clement Novalak. Clement Novalak and Jack Doohan. Now, they're 1-2. Now, Novalak wants to win a race. He hasn't won a race yet. Jack Doohan has. Trident, basically... Now, keep in mind, the way it works is, the teams are kind of employees of the drivers, almost, if that makes sense. The drivers have really no loyalty to their teammates in F3, F2. So, but the teams want to win the team's championship. Now, when you're on thin margins, and all you have to do, and you have your 2 cars, 1-2, and you can win the team's championship, you're basically like, please don't race each other. Please hold position. Well, try tell 2 young guys who don't technically work for you to hold position. Good luck. There were periods of time there where I legitimately thought those 2 guys were going to crash each other and ruin the whole thing for Trident. And be like, throw their whole team's championship out the window, give it to Prema, and everything goes wrong. Prema gets the driver's championship and the team championship, even though Trident had a perfect chance. No, Doohan held on and was able to get that big Teams Championship with Jack Doohan and Clement Nowak finishing 1-2. David Schumacher didn't score any points, which was interesting. But the biggest, I want to talk about Logan Sargent again, because by virtue of winning that race, keep in mind, he started 12th. So the way the F3 works, they have the reverse grid. So because he qualified 12th, that started first in the feature race, or in the sprint race, he had to start 12th in the feature. Well, Logan Sargent doesn't let that get to him. No, this man simply had one of the best cars. I don't think he had the best cars because Charouz is terrible, but he had one of the best drives I could probably ever see. This guy drove all the way from 12th to 4th and passed everybody in between on merit and on sheer pace, and he probably would have gotten a podium if he had a few extra laps. I just want to state right now to everybody listening, if you know someone with a lot of money, they need to sponsor Logan Sargent right now, because this dude is not in Formula 2 next year, and if we lose him, I will be outrageously disappointed. I wouldn't mind if he comes to IndyCar. I'd still be disappointed, but I would prefer his racing career continue, because I think this is somebody who has a boatload of talent and is an American driver, is a likable American driver, and is somebody who is just gritty, hardworking. And again, he got the Charouz ride basically for free and carried them. Do you know where he finished in the points? He finished ahead of Arthur Leclerc in the Prema, who won 2 races. He finished ahead of Prema's basically golden boy in Arthur Leclerc. He finished ahead of Ollie Caldwell, who was also Prema's golden boy, in a Charouz, which was easily the worst car on the grid. He finished 7th in the points.
What does that? What is that? What that? It's obvious, but what does that say about his talent?
It says that he maximized and then some the car. He got all he could get out of the car and then some.
Yeah,
is what it's saying. He carried that team. I don't think when Enzo Fittipaldi had some decent pace in the Charouz, but he was never as fast as Sargent. So Enzo accumulates for, I think, 3 total points of Charouz, but I believe the rest of all of the points scored by Charouz were scored by Logan Sargent alone. Out of a 3-car organization, you have one guy scoring all but 3 points. That should tell you just how good Sargent was, man. He finished 7th in the Drivers' Championship, all alone, by himself, on merit, carried Charouz, who could have easily been dead last in the Drivers' Championship, to at least, I don't know, I can't remember where they finished, but it had to have been like 5th.
Remind how many people are in, how many drivers are in F3?
30.
30, so he finished 7th out of 30. He finished
7th out of 30 drivers.
Pretty darn good. Good.
And Charouz, there's 10 teams, 30 drivers, 3 cars per team. So for Sargent to do what he did, he deserves an F2 ride. I don't know if it's going to be, if it's with Charouz, it's probably going to be a rough F2, but that shouldn't detract him too much. I think everybody will say, this guy beat F3 champions. This guy could have had an F3 championship. Yeah, I know you're looking at me at time. Let's talk about the outstanding performance and not talk about Logan Sargent. Mine's going to Max Verstappen, just again from driving from 20th to 2nd. Josh, who's yours?
I'm going Ty Dillon because he led Jordan Anderson's first laps for their team history. He held on to 2nd, and I bet if it weren't for just a miscue on his part on pit road, they may have been able to get a top 5. That car had really good speed, despite even having damage from that big one that happened on lap 31. So we even talk about that. But yeah, he survived that. Mine goes to Ty Dillon. And yours, Max Verstappen, very disturbing. So upshift, downshift here. We're going to try and crank this out in 10 minutes or less. Upshift, you agree. Downshift, you disagree. We can throw it into neutral for whatever reasons. It's kind of like a catch-all kind of shift. No special edition this week. It's just regular questions, and play along. Let us know what you think, whether how you shift, and let us know what you think about our shift and our reasoning. So first question here, Lewis Hamilton ends his F1 career with 125 Grand Prix victories. Do you upshift or downshift, Rob?
I downshift. I say he's going to have more. He's going to have more than that. I don't think Hamilton is done. Hamilton is still in his prime. Hamilton can walk away literally whenever he wants, and he doesn't have to walk away. Sure, he's proven everything. He's won 7 championships. He's won over 100 wins. Why stop? Dude's still at the prime. He's driving for the best team on the grid. He's still in his prime. Why stop? I say he's getting more.
I kind of have a hard time disagreeing with you, but my thing is like I don't know how much time he wants to drive, how much more time he wants to take away from his philanthropic and his other interests that he wants to do outside of the race car. But saying I agree with you, he's in his prime. I upshift. I think he'll get 125 and then some.
He's not just in his prime. He's been in his prime for the last decade.
Oh yeah,
I'll just be honest with you on that.
I don't think he's anywhere close to stopping. Next one here, Romain Grosjean is a 3-race winner in 2022 in IndyCar in his debut season with Andretti Autosport. Do you upshift or downshift? Rob's looking
probably the hardest question you're going to ask me this whole time because I'm looking at the other ones and I think I have a pretty solid idea of how I want to go with that, but this might be the hardest one because it all depends on if it's team or driver at Andretti. If it's team, hell no. If it's driver, yeah, probably. But if that 28 DHL team is just bad and it wasn't Hunter Ray's fault and they're just not good, I don't see Grosjean doing any better. I mean, I don't think he's going to win 3 races. He might win 1 race. He might get lucky and win 1. But I really have a hard time seeing him win more than that, especially if it turns out to be team more than driver.
I'm going to downshift. It's hard to win 1 race in IndyCar in such a short season. It's difficult to win 2. It's darn near impossible to win 3 unless you are on fire, right? We just don't see many three race winners.
Colton Herta won more than 3 this year, and he was in contention for the championship.
I know that, but Colton Herta was like missed opportunity central this year. If he didn't have as many issues as he did, he could have been the guy standing on the championship podium this year. But I think he's going to be bringing people with him over to Andretti, and I think that will help the transition and help the not so much a learning curve, but the meshing of him with the team and learning this car and helping improve the team at the end of the day. I think he'll get 2 wins. I think he gets 2 wins. 3? No, I don't think he gets 3. Third question here. The Las Vegas playoff race for the NASCAR Cup Series should be a Saturday night race on NBC. Do you upshift or downshift? And it currently is a Sunday night race on NBCSN going up against Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I'm going to have to easily agree with that one. I'm going to upshift it, but you know where I feel. I think that Las Vegas would be better if you really want to have a Sunday night race to have that be the playoff, the championship race, the final race of the season, just because of all the reasons I stated in the first part of the show. I don't think I need to reiterate those. I think my answer is pretty clear.
Yeah, I upshift as well. I don't. The excuse you could say is that Notre Dame football is playing that day. Well, okay. Well, Notre Dame football can play an afternoon game.
They've shoved Notre Dame football onto Peacock before. They did it this year already. It angered pretty much every single old person on the planet, and I don't blame them. Yeah, but it's not like they're not going to do it. It's not like they wouldn't do it again.
Yeah, again, but this is to me. This is just the TV networks are driving the show in every sport right now, with maybe the exception of the NFL. Okay, but they're driving the show everywhere else. So if NBC says, Notre Dame, we know you're playing whoever that night, but we're going to move your game to Peacock, or you have to start the game at 2:00. Which one do you want? 2:00 game or a game on Peacock? Because we're going to run the NASCAR Cup race that night because we're going to get more viewers, and we don't have to go up against the NFL. What you want to do? It's Las Vegas. This isn't Kansas. This is Las Vegas. So I don't know. I upshift. This is kind of one of those races that has always confused me since it's been moved to the fall, or it's been added to the fall. All right, the last one here. Pole winners in Formula One should be able to choose which side of the grid they want to start in. Do you upshift or downshift?
I think that's absolutely a fair thing to give a pole winner in F1 is the ability to choose the line that they want to start on. I mean, I understand for traditionalist sake, okay, they should start on the outside, inside, whatever. I get that, but at the same time, winning the pole is not easy. I think you should be able to choose. I mean, in most other sports, in most other forms of auto racing, like in NASCAR and I think in IndyCar too, you could choose whether or not you want to restart or start on the outside, start on the outside or the inside if you're the pole sitter. I don't see any reason why they can't do the same thing for Formula One. That's just my opinion because I feel like you should. Getting the pole is hard enough. I think they should be able to, because they're good when you're the pole sitter, especially like we saw at Sochi. When you're the pole sitter, you're breaking the air for everybody behind you. And with the aero the way it is now, I mean, everybody is going to be able to get a good run on you, and you should be able to defend your position. And if you have to cut across, the whole racetrack in order to defend your position, that's not going to be safe. You could cause a big accident there, or you could, cause some front wing damage, cut down a tire, maybe not an accident, but, give yourself some damage. Yeah, I think that's something that F1 should start doing is allowing the drivers the pole sitters to pick which side of the racetrack they want to start on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because I think, Sochi, I think it was a couple years ago, Bottas was going for third. He wasn't going for the pole, he was going for third because that was the preferred spot. While that was in the same line as first, the pole sitter was at such a disadvantage. Again, as you said, breaking the air for everyone else in the tow. If this should be, and it shouldn't just be like, I would even go as far as to say the line shifts with it. So if the pole sitter wants to start on the inside, all the even numbers, they start on the inside, and the odds start on the outside. Or I got the numbers mixed up there. Odds starting with the one. I know math. Trust me, I know math. I'm defending my math skills on a podcast. But yeah, I agree. This is something that's kind of bothered me for a few years, especially when it comes to Sochi, just in particular. And then you think of the Senna and Prost in Japan. What year was that? 89? 88? 89?
90, I think.
I
was not born. So
yeah, I think it was 89.
We weren't born at this time. Forgive us.
Wasn't it the race that they collided on the first lap and the championship effectively went to Senna? Yeah. I think that was 89. That was 89. So again, there's that situation there. There's certainly more that come into mind, but that's a very notorious one. That's upshift downshift. Quick one. Hey, we did that in a little under 8 minutes. So there you go, Rob. All right, so on to Rollers featured Racetrack this week. I'm going to jump right into this. We've discussed the 2021 Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach today, and I'm going to share a snippet of a near 50-year history of the Grand Prix of Long Beach today in this segment. So, the initial thought that led to racing coming to the streets of Long Beach was inspired by Monaco. Chris Pook wanted to bring another, quote, Monte Carlo-esque race to Southern California, and Long Beach was selected to be the host. What made the decision to race in Long Beach interesting was the fact that at the time, the city was very industrial and not built up like it is today. It was very much an industrious port city. The inaugural race was a Formula 5000 race held on September 28th, 1975, which is odd because we were currently recording on September 28th. At the time, the circuit was 2.02 miles in length. An estimated 65,000 spectators witnessed the start of the brand new American auto racing tradition. 44 cars qualified, and the starting lineup was ultimately set by 2 heat races. Mario Andretti won the pole, but finished second in Heat 1 to Tony Breeze, and Heat 2 was won by Al Unser. At the start, Al Unser led from second on the grid. On lap 3, pole sitter Tony Breeze had taken the lead, and Mario Andretti took over second place. Breeze led until lap 15, when both Andretti and Unser got by. Breeze repassed Unser on the next lap and battled with Andretti until he retook the lead on lap 29. On lap 33, Andretti retired with a transmission failure, and 1 lap later, Breeze retired with a broken drive shaft. Brian Redmond took the lead and pulled away to a nearly 30-second victory. 1 year prior to this Grand Prix, the city of Long Beach began a multi-million-dollar revitalization. The Formula 5000 race was somewhat of a dress rehearsal because in 1976, Formula One arrived. The race shifted to early spring, where it is traditionally held today, and the first F1 race in Long Beach was contested on March 28, 1976. Listed as the United States Grand Prix West, it was race number 3 of 16 on the 1976 F1 World Championship. Ferrari's Clay Regazzoni won, beating teammate Niki Lauda by 42 seconds. Tyrrell's Patrick Depp-Ely finished third. Eventual 76 champion James Hunt retired following a crash after only completing 3 laps. The only American in the race, Mario Andretti, retired after 15 laps due to a water leak. Long Beach's popularity soared while the other F1 race in America at Watkins Glen declined. The great weather, picturesque setting, there's one of my favorite words, picturesque, in the proximity to Hollywood made it a popular stop on the F1 tour. Despite this, each year was a major risk for Pook, and prior to the 1984 season, he convinced city leaders to switch the race to a kart event due to the financial risk being very much lower. Joining Regazzoni as Long Beach F1 winners were Mario Andretti, Carlos Reutemann, Gilles Villeneuve, Nelson Piquet, Alan Jones, Niki Lauda, and John Watson. So there's never a repeat winner there. When kart arrived, it was the Andretti family who dominated the first 4 races. The Andretti patriarch Mario won in 84, 85, and 87. Son Michael won in 1986, and it was his first career victory in kart. After the Andretti's, it was the Unser's turn to dominate, specifically and only Hal Unser Jr. Between 1988 and 1995, 8 total races, he won 6 times. Michael did return to victory lane at Long Beach for a second time in 2002, which, oddly enough, was his 42nd and final career victory. Beginning in 2008, the race switched sanctioning to IndyCar following the reunification of kart and IndyCar. Will Power was the first to win under the new IndyCar sanctioning. 2 of Mike Conway's 4 IndyCar victories came at Long Beach. His first career victory was in 2011. He was behind the wheel of the 27 Andretti Autosport Honda, and the second came in 2014, driving the number 20 for Ed Carpenter. Joining Andretti and Conway as drivers to earn their first career victories in Long Beach were Paul Tracy, Juan Pablo Montoya, and Takuma Sato. In 2005, Catherine Legg won the Atlantic Championship support race at Long Beach, her first start in the series, and in doing so, she became the first female driver to win a developmental open-wheel race in North America. Now, to summarize the circuit itself, it's changed a few times over the course of the history of Long Beach as it's developed and built new streets and realignments and new buildings and stuff like that. So from 75 to 81, the course was 2.02 miles in length. In 1982, it was 2.13 miles. In 83, it was shortened just a bit to 2.035. When kart arrived in 84, the course was shortened quite dramatically to 1.67 miles. In 1987, the course remained the same overall length, but a change on the backstretch, essentially, led to a couple 90-degree corners instead of more of a sweep. From 1992 to 1998, the course was 1.574 miles long. In 1999, the course, as we now know today, began to take shape, and it was lengthened to 1.824 miles. And now, since 2000, the circuit has been 1.968 miles long. Hard to believe that course is just under 2 miles long. It's kind of like Sonoma, the old NASCAR circuit at Sonoma. You feel like it's a lot longer than that, but no, it's under 2 miles. In 2015 and 2016, the Long Beach Grand Prix was supported by a Formula E race, the Long Beach E-Prix. The series ran on a shortened version of the IndyCar course, totaling 1.32 miles. Nelson Piquet Jr. won in 2015, and Lucas Di Grassi won in 2016.
I wanted to add that I was so disappointed when this race didn't return to the Formula E schedule because I thought it was just the coolest thing that Formula E was running at Long Beach. I was like, man, we are literally because as a country, I think that the United States, Long Beach is our Monaco. Yeah. It is, as you mentioned earlier, it is our Monaco. And so to have Formula E come here and race on one of our most historic and popular and savory, I guess, I don't know, I'm trying to find another adjective to describe it, but one of the most prestigious, that's what I'm meaning, prestigious street races in all of North America, to bring Formula E there, I thought was really, really cool. And I'm really disappointed that any likelihood of that ever continuing seems to be dead in the water. But when those events were held, I was like, this is awesome. This is really cool.
Yeah. Being summarized here, with the exception of 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Long Beach Grand Prix has been contested every year since 1975. The race has built up the city of Long Beach from simply, as I mentioned earlier, a major industrial port for the United States, but a vacation and party destination for Southern California tourists. Without the race, it's possible that the Disney Corporation may never have considered building a new theme park, Westcott, in the city. Of course, that theme park was never built. Now, as the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim look for a new ballpark, Long Beach has been rumored to be on the short list as possible cities to be the new host. All of this and more is due to one man's vision, and that was America's Monaco Grand Prix, Long Beach, as you just mentioned there. Sports cars and IT's open-wheel feeder divisions, among others, have raced at Long Beach too, but none have been more pivotal than F1 car and IndyCar. I know the 2021 edition was rescheduled for September, and ultimately the season finale, and the 22 edition will return to its traditional spring date, but Long Beach has one of the richest traditions in American motor racing, and aside from the Indianapolis 500, it's a race every IndyCar competitor wants to win. I say in 2023, Long Beach should become this new season finale for IndyCar. I know that's kind of like woo out there, but I enjoyed watching the race. I didn't mention this earlier intentionally so I could talk about it here. I felt this really cool vibe, and it just looked cool. Monterey, Sonoma, great picturesque scenes. One of my favorite words, picturesque. Great picturesque scenes and great places to end a season. But there's something about this urban setting that you can bring the race to the fans, because it looked thousands and thousands of people there. I don't know if I remember an IndyCar race there that had that many people. Maybe I'm just building it up because it's been 2 years since we've been there. But I want to see Long Beach be the season finale in 23. Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
My favorite part, I always feel like Long Beach is like this unofficial kickoff to like kind of the spring, the warm spring, summer months.
Yeah.
Because it always feels like once the Long Beach Grand, this is how I've always felt ever since I've been like a kid watching Long Beach races. I've always felt like, oh hey, it's Long Beach time. It's we can put on shorts now. We can put on some short sleeve shirts. We can, go outside and get our spring fever going. I always love that feeling when Long Beach is in town. It's Long Beach because it's like, all right, yeah, we're going to Long Beach, and it always provides a great race. Always provides a very entertaining and exciting race. It's one of those street courses that is just we've been talking about it. It's our Monaco. It's the United States' Monaco, and I love it. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks in the circuit. I don't know if I want it to be the finale again, as cool as this was. I kind of am weirdly nostalgic. I love I'm always nostalgic, but I love my feeling of, okay, Long Beach is here. I can break out the shorts. I can open up the windows. Yeah, let's go. I like that. So definitely Long Beach always been one of my favorite street courses in North America.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else to say, Rob, I think we need to wrap this up here. What's in the windshield? In 2 weeks, Formula One returns and does so at Istanbul Park for the Turkish Grand Prix, and what ultimately is a replacement for the Canadian Grand Prix. That race is on October 10th. On Saturday, October 2nd, the ARCA Menards Series, the big ARCA Menards Series, travels to Salem Speedway in Indiana. It's race number 19 of 20. Yeah. It's only 2 more races remain on that season, because that season will conclude at Kansas Speedway on October 23rd. The West Series, ARCA Menards Series West, has 2 more races in 2021 on October 9th there in the All-American Speedway in Roseville, California, before the season finale race at Phoenix on November 6th as a support race for NASCAR Championship Weekend. The NASCAR triple heads at Talladega, Alabama. On Saturday, the Truck Series, Camping World Truck Series, and the Xfinity Series both race on that day. And then on Sunday, it's the Cup Series, was the second event in the round of 12. Talladega weekend. Time to get your heart pumping.
It's Talladega week.
Talladega week. How many miles is this? 1,050 miles of craziness is about to take place. So get ready, buckle in.
And it's not a cutoff race for anybody.
It's not a cutoff race for anybody. You're right. Not a cutoff race for anybody.
Remember, it's acceptable at Daytona, but not at Talladega.
It's acceptable for the season, for the regular season. Not acceptable for the playoffs.
If it's not acceptable at Talladega, it's not acceptable at Daytona.
Well,
I'm going to say that till the day I die. If it's not acceptable to have a cutoff race at Talladega, it's not acceptable to have one at Daytona.
He will live and die on that.
I will live and die on that.
Yeah, he will. He will. Yeah. All right, well, that's it for the show today, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. However you're listening to this, wherever and whenever you're listening to it, thanks for tuning in, showing us some support. Let us know how we're doing. Make sure you follow us. Rob is on Twitter is at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS33. I'm at roller_01, ROLLER_01. The show is at Robin Roller, just as it sounds there, ROBANDROLLER, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I love how I say just as it sounds, and I still spell it out. Just wanted to say that. Also, I could read this part covering my eyes. I don't need to see you read that. I've said it so many times. I'm glad I'm making you laugh here, Rob. All right, and then you can also find us on YouTube. Just search Racing with Rob and Roller, and you can find us there. So that's it for the show today. A lot to talk about there. We had a lot of good racing and some racing. That's okay. Not every weekend can be perfect. Not every weekend can be race mess. It's okay. All right. For Rob Peters, I'm Josh Roller, and this was the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. Have a great week, everybody.